Are we ready to go?
We're ready.
All right. Well, we will then call the meeting of the Shelburne Select Board to order on February 26, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. And we will accept the meeting minutes of February 12th. Rick, have you had a chance to read them?
Yes, I have. Couple of minor typos that did nothing to change the gist of the detail. Everything I saw looked fine to me, and if it did with you, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion has been made. I will second. And discussion, I will only add my own small comment, which is that in the section where we were reviewing the Arms Library budget, there was a mention made of my comment about moving the rearranging the dates of the days of operation. And I guess I wanted to be more specific about that and say that I specifically suggested that because we had approved Sunday hours of operation a year or two before, I suggested that we move away from Monday and thereby increase the hours of availability to our residents, since a number of those Mondays are holidays. So that was the specific suggestion I made that has budgetary impact. The suggestion that I'm simply wanting the Arms Library to move its dates around does not have budgetary impact, and that was not what I suggested.
I will make that change.
I recall that as well, Andrew. And you also noted that it would give better spacing to the days they were open as well.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I see that.
Good. Well, if there's no other changes to the minutes, I will make a motion that we vote on it. All in favor, Rick?
Aye. Andrew
is aye, and the motion carries. And we're on to department liaison reports. Rick?
Yes. The police department report, we've discovered a whole bunch of things stored at Cowell Gym in the process as the rec committee improves and creates new programs and so on. And we've found some things that go back at least 3 police chiefs, back to Chief DeGiacomi's time frame, I think, stored in the attic, in the basement, wherever. And John Walsh as the director, and the chair of the RecCom, and I, and the chief, and Tom Williams, the emergency management director, have all been kind of coordinating, trying to figure out what to do with them. A lot of the things, or some of the things, have been taken out by the police already. There's more to do that hasn't been able to be gotten to yet. I mentioned last week the emergency director found several boxes of cots and so on in the lower level, and he'll be moving those as well. And the good news is last week's test of the emergency backup generator at the new police station was successful and is now fully online. On the emergency management committee, I attended their meeting since our last one. It turned out to be their first actual meeting this fiscal year due to lack of a quorum in attendance. And pretty much the crux of it was they are discussing their formation, their mission, the number of members. It appears when this committee was first established, the select board did not give it a specific charge or structure as to how many people could be on it and so on. They are having another meeting in March and trying to work all that stuff out, and will come to the select board with a proposal to actually do what the select board has done for every other committee and commission in town, and give it some structure so that they appreciate their charge. And I think it's a good thing. They're moving forward, getting excited about things again. So I'll keep you informed on that. Lastly, I'd like just to say hats off to our emergency management director, who took it upon himself to bring the paperwork for our application for funds after last July's storm that did so much damage. Application through MEMA for relief money, which we were denied and many other towns around us got. He said, this doesn't seem right. And he took it upon himself to go visit a representative for Senator Paul Mark when he was up in Buckland recently. Gave him the paperwork. That representative did his job, and turns out there was let me get the right official words they used, a transcription error somewhere between NEMA and some other organization down the line, all the hoops they have to jump through. And apparently we should have gotten some money for that. So that process will continue to unfold, and we'll see what happens, and maybe we'll get something for it. But hats off to Tom for taking it upon himself to chase that. I thought that was impressive.
Yes, good. Yeah, I agree entirely. That's great work. We'll see. We'll hope it bears some fruit.
Yes.
Anything more for you, Rick?
No, sir.
All right, Terry, do you have anything on the town hall side?
Not most of mine is in the agenda.
Okay. I think there are a few items of mine in the agenda as well, so I will leave it there and go forward into, I guess we're a wee bit early for our first appointment, so we can jump down to old business. The RFP for the solar array for the highway pole barn roof. Terry, I just got a draft today, so I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Is that kind of where we are at this point?
Yes, it's a draft that John and I have been working on. I'd love to get both. Rick has reviewed it, gave me his comments. I'd like your comments before we go to the chief procurement officer at the FERCog. Okay,
great. I'll try to look at that later tonight.
It's 53 pages. You might want to wait until you're fresh.
Okay.
Oh my
A lot of
goodness.
it's boilerplate, though.
Yeah. No, I've seen several earlier drafts, so I think that John and Terry have been doing good cleanup work, and paring out some of the stuff that's not relevant to our project, and so I think I can move through it expeditiously. Let's see. I think the traffic calming thing might take us more than 5 minutes, so I'll jump to Rosselli, Clark and Associates offer to meet GASB 34 compliance. Terry.
I wanted to bring this to the board's attention. In 1989, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board initiated some new financial reporting standards for state and local government. The town of Shelburne did not comply because at the time we received estimates for what it would cost to comply. And really, aside from receiving an adverse opinion in our audit report, this really only comes into play if the town were to obtain a bond rating. Because the Finance Committee feels it's important to comply with this accounting standard, I reached out to an auditing firm that we've recently awarded for the next 3 years, who gave me an estimate for doing the work for us so that the town could be compliant in future years. And it's a cost of not to exceed $10,000. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It's an accounting of all assets of the town, roads, underwater underground infrastructure, buildings, vehicles, personal property. And so it would take some time to develop that portfolio. And I just wanted the board to think about whether or not they felt it was worth pursuing. I talked to both the towns of Coleraine and Buckland who actually underwent the process, but they did so because they needed to obtain a bond rating for borrowing. I've talked to other towns who just didn't feel it was worth it. But I feel like I think our finance committee or a member of the finance committee feels differently.
Well, one thought that I have, Terry, about that is, since we have the finance committee with us tonight to do budget reviews, maybe we could ask them directly, now that we have a price for this, to say, is this your recommendation that we spend this money to achieve this objective, now that you know how much it will cost? Does that seem like a reasonable next step to you?
Sure. I mean, we could obtain quotes from qualified people to do this work. But I trust that up to 10,000 is a fair price, and we would certainly work with whomever was doing this work for the town, hoping to ease the cost, but
Right. No, I wasn't suggesting it was not a fair price. I was suggesting that the finance committee give us their affirmative recommendation, knowing what the price tag is.
mhm,
Whereas before they were just saying, we think you should do this, but now they know that it costs, you know, up to $10,000. And so that's what I would like to hear from them, is their assessment that, yes, this is worth that money.
okay. Yeah, the town has had an adverse opinion in their audit since 1989 because we've chosen not to follow through with this process.
Uh-huh. Well, it doesn't seem like that has hurt us too much in the last 35 years then, or 25 years. 35 years. But, you know, I'd be interested just to hear what their thinking is and why they want to spend $10,000 to achieve this goal. Rick, your thoughts?
I agree.
Okay.
Let's ask for that input.
Good. All right. Well, we will circle around back to that when we get them on the airwaves for our appointments. But we are now, I think, close enough to 5:45 that we can introduce Alan Peteroy, the Franklin Land Trust, regarding the Flaccus conservation restriction. Alan, are you there?
Yep, that's me, Elaine.
Oh, Elaine, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, common French for Alan.
Yes.
So thank you all for having us on tonight. I'm the conservation director at the Franklin Land Trust. I think I've seen a few of you over the years. And Larry and Susan Flaccus are with us also. And so we're here because Larry and Susan of Kenburn Orchards on Route 2. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. It's across the street from the sheep wool mitten place. And so they have been working for many years to conserve their property with a conservation restriction on it. It's 152 acres. It has been surveyed. The property has been in Chapter 61 forestry for decades now. And it's been in Susan's family since the 1920s. And they do actually have a great history on their website. And so they have kept I can share a map. Is that okay if I share a screen?
Sure, go right ahead. Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. think you have to enable me, Terry.
You
Oh.
should be set.
Oh, I should be okay. All right, there we go. Let's see. It was there. So this map is actually the map of the property along Route 2 Mohawk Trail, and you can see its proximity to Apex orchards and other APRs to the northeast, the northwest of it. This map kind of gives you a little bit broader location of the property. So the conservation restriction would conserve the land in perpetuity and allow for all the uses that it currently is employing and has in the past, including forestry and agriculture, trails. Privacy is still there, but the landowners can allow folks to come on it. Recreational uses. And right now they have blueberries, and they had Christmas tree farm on it for many years, and it had been orchard. It's really quite amazing for wildlife habitat. If everyone is familiar with it, you cross that little bridge, cross Allen Brook, and then go up to their house. The house itself is on a 6-acre envelope. So within that envelope is where it's very basically like a house lot that you can do what you need to do on it. And that will continue as it stands. This conservation restriction will run with the property if it's sold or passed along. And so we feel like this is a really important, one of those important farms to really get conserved because it's in an area where it's already conserved. It has very good soils. It's already in active agriculture and could return to more active with the next owners. And so the restriction which I had included is getting signed by the select board, the landowners, the Franklin Land Trust, and then the state. And the municipal certification, which I had also shared, has been already done by the Conservation Commission. So they voted on the public benefit of this, of conserving this farm. And so that was included with the items that I shared with you. And Larry and Susan are on the meeting right now. I don't know, Larry, if you want to say a few words about why you want to do this, or Susan, you're kind of going in and out. It's hard to see your faces, at least where I am.
Susan is actually next to me here, but she's kind of fading in and out.
Okay.
But one of the things, I was talking to someone today about the property and its importance to Shelburne, and pointed out that it's really the first significant farm on the Mohawk Trail coming from up the hill from Greenfield. And it really sets the tone for the town, being a farming community, being a rural community. And we certainly want to continue with that addition to the town. Susan, it's been in Susan's family since 1924. So this is our centennial year for the farm. It's been 100 years in the family. And we certainly want to continue with it. Excuse me.
I can take over. Yeah, it really is a long-term project for us. My dad asked that we not let it be developed, and since he died in 1997, we've been one way or another working on getting it preserved. And it wasn't until the last couple of years that we decided that we really have to do it the way we're doing it, which is not through an APR or other mechanism that would give us money, but to do it this way. There is a small stipend involved from the Land Trust, for which we are very grateful. But this allows people to farm or not farm as long as the property is not developed. And I think this is a more, it's just a little bit less restrictive than an APR. And we really do hope very much that you'll approve it, because it's a long standing dream of my dad's. It's a long-standing dream of mine. And you all know that Larry has been the chair of the Open Space Committee since its inception, basically, and that he also is extraordinarily devoted to the preservation of open space and being stewards of the land. What Larry didn't say today is that you can always make more money or get more things, but you can't get more land. And so we really feel that it's our privilege to be able to preserve the land as open land. So we do hope that you'll be able to support it. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions or?
Yeah, I do. Just in looking at that map with the red boundaries, I think I see the houses inside the red boundaries. And I'm just curious, since you mentioned those would be kind of carved out as a residential 6-acre set aside, why isn't there a different boundary line there?
Right, so I'm just trying to get to the proper. So this is the actual survey.
Oh,
So-
I see. Okay,
Yep.
thank
So it-
that answers my question.
Yeah, so it actually uses what we describe as an envelope. So it is basically the house lot, but we use it as an envelope so that by doing that, it creates a singular premise. So all the land and the house all stay together. So nobody can sell the house off and sell the land to somebody else. So we feel that it's a better, a safer way to ensure that the land will be managed by the folks that care about it because they are the owners.
I think I'm understanding now. So what you're saying is that even though there's a rectangle delineating the residential portion, it's not a subdivision. It's not.
Exactly.
Okay, that helps explain that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's described as an envelope, so it's nested within the conservation restriction.
Uh-huh.
And so, and you can see actually on this detail, like that is actually the town road that goes up kind of as a backward facing, well, what would it look like? A popsicle
Hockey
stick or
stick.
something, yes. And so that's actually town road. So the town maintains that and then turns around. And then their house, what we're calling an envelope or building envelope, is what's in there. And then that's attached to that nests right in with the rest of the property. It has significant frontage along Route 2. So really from a scenic standpoint, as Larry pointed out, it's really pretty tremendous with Allen Brook running basically through here and all the way down. So it's not as if that's frontage that is developable. That is basically wetland frontage.
But the purpose of the little flag lot rectangle is to delineate the residential property that is assessed as residential as opposed to the conserved land that would be assessed at a lower rate. Is that correct?
Well, and the land is already under chapter 61 for forestry. And
Right.
Larry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is probably a very similar shape to what is excluded in the chapter 61 forestry plan. There's probably a little bit more around it because it's not all forest. There's more open land there. And so, down over here, but that is essentially similar. So it's already under a lower tax. Larry's been managing it for forestry and agriculture for, like I said, several decades. And that's a 10-year plan. So the taxes will not change on this once it's enrolled once this conservation restriction goes on it.
I see. So it's just really moving the 61, which would just be for this set of owners, to a conservation restriction, which would ride with the deed and would be in effect for any future owners.
Most likely, and in our experiences, most landowners, if they if this land was inherited or sold and it came along with a chapter 61 a 10-year forestry plan that had like another 5 or 6 years, most landowners keep that on. And they're very compatible to have a forestry plan and a conservation restriction. We actually encourage that because the 61 is really guiding how they're managing the woods, how much timber they're working with the forester. So it's a really good thing to have a forest management plan on the property with the conservation restriction. But yes, it could certainly expire and then they could choose to not
Right.
renew it.
But the CR is permanent,
The
right?
CR is permanent.
Yeah. Okay, great. Rick, do you have questions or thoughts?
I don't. I spent the time reading the entire document earlier today for the
Oh.
second time, breezing
Thank
through. It's very comprehensive, very well done. If you look at the map here, just to the right of your mouse, you'll see my name.
Yes.
So as a short a butter to that piece of property,
Yeah.
I'm thrilled with what they're doing personally.
Wonderful, wonderful. I will stop sharing this.
Great.
And there's,
Terry, any questions or thoughts?
Jeff Bettner has his hand raised.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks. I just really wanted to support this. Larry's done such a wonderful job of taking care of the property, and it's just such a valuable resource. I was a wildlife biologist at UMass for 32 years and drove past his property daily. And but one thing I'd love to see happen over time with this is I see a tremendous amount of wildlife kill by his property because of the ponds so close to Route 2, and they try and get across to the other ponds on the other side. That if there would be any way for the state when they're doing the road work to add a culvert for animal crossings, I think it would be a tremendous value. I've seen dead mink, dead otter, dead beavers. And then a whole host of, a little bit more common things, gray fox, red fox. Yeah, it's a really valuable spot, and a lot of things are getting lost on that, but it still shows you the value of what that property has on it. It's just tremendous, and just wanted to say that. I totally support it.
well, thank
That-
you.
Thank you, Jeff. Other public comments? Terry, did you have any questions or thoughts?
No, I did not. I'm very supportive of the proposal.
Great.
Thank you,
Alright.
Terry.
All right. Well, if there are no further comments, I will entertain a motion to accept.
I will make a motion that the select board supports and signs the conservation restriction for the Flackus property as outlined.
And I will second that.
Wonderful.
And if there's no further discussion, we'll bring it to a vote. All in favor, Rick?
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and the motion carries.
Excellent.
And
Thank you all so much.
congratulations to all of you, and
so
thank you.
much.
That's
Thank
great.
you, Susan and Larry, for all your work in this regard.
And
Thank you.
I will bring by the document for both of you to sign. We are trying on a very tight schedule, so I will bring it by for Terry, and if you two can stop by at your earliest convenience, then we can FedEx it back to the state for their signatures. So appreciate it.
Great, will do.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. We are just on time here. Our next appointment is with Jake Eberwein from Berkshire 12 ORG regarding the Mohawk Trail Regional School District Sustainability Study Phase 2. Willow, do you want to lead us off on that? Or Cheryl, do you want to, I don't know who's in the lead on this particular one.
I am not sure either. I will say that the school committee, is very excited and in support of this work. Jake did a presentation for the committee a couple of meetings ago, and it was just really wonderful to see that. And I know there's already been a ton of work that I'm sure Cheryl could also share with the steering committee, and other subcommittees that are being formed, and I am part of the communications subcommittee. So we are really excited to also get into it, be supportive, do the work. So I'm excited to be here and to also hear what Jake has to say.
Great. And
Thank
Cheryl,
you.
did you have any words of introduction about this, or you want to?
Sure. Thanks, Andrew.
Sure.
Hi, Terry. I haven't seen you in a while. So I want to echo what Willow said, which is that all of the towns in Mohawk Trail, including Hollowmont, have been looking at sustainability for a really long time, including reports from 2008, 2010, 2015, and our most current report, which was phase 1, updating the 2015 data. And so now we're at a place with Jake and his group and his work to really examine and analyze the data and really gather input from the community so that if we are to have any sort of changes coming through this work, that the community is well informed and that we are well ahead of any town meetings that we would be anticipating having to make any votes, which would include all of you, regarding regional agreement amendments or changes in physical structures that we have or instructional programming. So I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to say thank you to this collective group of our 8 towns who have been on top of this, as I said, since 2008, and just say thank you for that. And it's been a long road. So my hope is that people don't feel sort of burnt out along this journey, but that we can in 2024 really look at some long-term solutions that will impact the quality of programming that we can provide for our students, and support the town's abilities to raise appropriate funds for the education system, which I know is a struggle, but I also know that you all support. So with that, I will kick it over to Jake.
Thanks, Cheryl and Willow. I really appreciate the excellent introduction. I'm not sure I need to say anything else. Cheryl, you got it all covered. No, I appreciate the board, Andrew and the board, inviting us to be here tonight. We have a slide deck that I'll walk through. It sort of keeps me on point if that's okay. I think, let's see if I can share. Oh, beautiful. You're all set up, everyone. You're way ahead of me. All right, let's get this dialed up here. So the slide deck, as I said earlier, you can all see that okay now? Great. All right. So this is posted on the website, and I'll orient you to the website very quickly. But again, just want to thank everyone for welcoming us into the district. Cheryl and her team, the committee members, the folks who are on the steering committee, who include Paul Hollings, who's on the line tonight. Just want to recognize him also. You've been nothing but incredibly open and welcoming to our team and helping to get this study launched. We are hoping and optimistic that we can offer just another set of eyes and hopefully a value proposition for your community as we move forward. So again, thanks for having us. I put up the logo of Berk 12, and I'll talk a little bit about who we are, so you have an orientation to our organization and what we've done, and hopefully what we can bring to this particular study. But I did want to call out that we do have an active website now. It's 2districts8towns.org, right there on the front page, and I'll show you a snapshot of that in just a minute. So a lot of the resources will be loaded on the website, and there'll be probably an incredible amount of information that we'll have the responsibility of curating and organizing and simplifying for folks to have access to as we get further into the study and start generating deliverables, including reports and in briefs and things of that sort. So today I just want to go over an overview of the charge, of our charge, what Berk 12 is a little bit about, what our work plan is, and then some resources. We did send along some prompts And I'll have some prompts tonight. I know we don't have enough time. You've got a full agenda to really get into discussion, but we're hoping that folks will provide some information via the prompts that we've loaded into a SurveyMonkey tool. And I do want to call out that our community engagement outreach is going to be a high priority in this project. We really want to hear from as many groups as we possibly can, as many stakeholders. And Mary Nash, who's part of our team, is on the call tonight, and she's going to be leading a lot of the work around community engagement. If at any point during the presentation you have questions, please, very informal. I know we're online, but don't be afraid to cut me off or ask me a question as we work through the presentation. The charge of our phase 2 sustainability study is to obviously continue the work of ongoing study analysis of the operating and organizational structures of the 2 regional school districts, Mohawk Trail and Holloman Regional School District, which encompass the 8 towns that you're all familiar with. This is a snapshot again of the website, which we encourage you to check out, 2districts8towns.org. We'll have meetings, the calendar posted there, information, all the historical studies that Cheryl referenced a couple of minutes ago are all loaded there and organized. And you'll see things, again, lots of information that's populated on the particular website. So the challenge that you all face is one that we all also face in Berkshire County. I live on the line, on the Dalton-Windsor line in Berkshire County, and we've been involved in sort of the challenges of shrinking rural regions that are facing that within which school districts are facing declining enrollment, and all that in light of the fact that operational costs for the districts continue to go up, and state aid is not really following the operational increases. In fact, state aid is relatively flat. Compounding all that is we have an increasing need within our student body, whether that's social emotional learning or special education or English language learners. All of those require additional and very focused and targeted resources. The idea here obviously is to result in an educational system that has the highest quality set of educational experiences, both within and outside the classroom, so kids can succeed post-high school, whether they choose a pathway directly to college, ultimately to career, and hopefully life in our community. We want to continue to think about retaining our students after they graduate and enter the world of life in our community. This is just a couple quick snapshots just to set the context. And again, these graphs are very similar to what we see in other rural Northeast regions, including Berkshire County. Pretty steep decline in enrollment over the last 30 years plus. And as you can see right now, you're sitting at around 730 kids K through 12, when back in 1997, you were closer to 1,700. Each of the other lines just represents grade bands, and we'll be doing a comprehensive enrollment look at your district, each of the schools, grade bands, also looking at what I call student flow, which is student choice in and out of the district, students who select to go to charter schools, private schools. We're going to unpack all that, and hopefully there'll be some things that come out of that work that'll be useful to the district. Enrollment for Holloman, somewhat consistent, although a little bit more bouncy, has seen some decline in the last couple of years. So enrollment is sort of challenge number one. Challenge number two are basically finances. And just a couple things. This is a chart that a lot of folks use to sort of illustrate what's happening in sort of a broad sense around school funding. And if you look at the orange bars basically are state aid since fiscal year 93. And as you can see, state aid is remaining relatively flat, and that's because you don't get more state aid when your student enrollment basically stays the same or declines. What you end up getting in effect is just minimum student increases, which any given year can be $30 or $60, but it doesn't increase commensurately with what operational costs go up. And then up here is kind of what you have to spend. That's your required spending, and most districts, as we know, spend beyond what they have to. And that's your solid blue line above. Just a couple of folks have asked me in some of the other presentations, why such a spike in FY23? And a lot of that is generated by the additional federal COVID relief funds, the ESSER funds that flowed into the districts. And so we saw a lot of districts that increased, but the bottom line is that the gap between what state aid provides and what districts spend has been increasing for the last, 30 years. And so that additional liability gets passed on to the homeowners, to the taxpayers in your local communities. And that's really the foundation behind the financial challenges that you all face. That's local revenue there. And finally, all this manifests in local assessments. I know Cheryl and her team are presenting your budgets right now, doing a great job of controlling costs. But ultimately, I sit on the Central Berkshire School Committee composed of 7 towns. And of course, we see every year that even though when we send out a total package out around our operating budget to our towns, that assessments for each town fluctuate based on the assessment methodology. But obviously, the blue line is the increase in total town assessment, which is relatively steady. And then in each year, there's sort of ups and downs in assessment. The idea is obviously to try to control assessments to the degree you can, so that towns can also, limit what they have to pass along to the taxpayers. This is not a graph I'm going to get into, but I just wanted to illustrate that we're going to be looking at a lot of town level data. And so having your support at the select board level and the finance subcommittee level will be incredibly important, because we know that a lot of the expenses that pertain to schools, which is really the biggest chunk of your budget, also connect into things around your tax levies and your limits, and so all those will manifest in certainly what you can whoops, someone is asking me to be admitted here, sorry, on a given year. All right, let me just get back here, sorry about that. All right, so let's get into a little bit about Berk 12. Berk 12 is an organization which was formed in 2015, and we came together primarily because we saw the same issues that you're all facing: declining enrollment, limited finances, and the need to provide high quality education across a range of student needs. And so we really promote solutions with both short-term and long-term. And again, the idea that education really drives the economics and the culture of our communities. And so it's one of the highest priorities in certainly our community, and I expect yours too. Berk 12 stands for Berkshire Educational Resources K through 12, just so you understand what the acronym stands for. And again, this is Berkshire County data, so you don't feel picked on. These are numbers that a lot of rural regions are seeing in terms of declining numbers. Our organization works in 4 areas. We work on collaborative projects, which is supporting projects that span more than 1 or 2 districts. We're involved in, like you all are, in a Bar Foundation supported high school reform effort that involves 6 high schools. We do professional development across Berkshire County. We support advocacy at the state level with our delegation at the State House. And obviously we do research, which is really what we're supporting, helping you all with towards what I call partnerships or solutions around regionalization, efficiencies, shared services, things of that sort. We recently completed a 2.5-year project in Southern Berkshire, which is a study that examined the potential for 2 regional school districts, Berkshire Hills and Southern Berkshire, to form a super region. Our approach basically is 5 steps, not overly complicated, and we're in step 1 right now, which is really the study period. We're trying to get to know your district, understanding the context. We have a plan for moving forward. We're going to be listening to all you through the engagement process, which is understanding what are the things that you have high appreciation for, that you highly value, where are your non-negotiables, where do you see possible solutions and opportunities within your district. And ultimately, you want to work towards a set of actions that people will agree to and that are sustainable. This is really a pretty simple model that we use in all of our research work. Of course, all of this was foundational, as Cheryl pointed out, is the work that you've done historically. And there's a series of studies you've done. We are reviewing those, we're curating those, we're synthesizing those. And we'll be actually one of the first papers we'll be producing is really a historical look back at what's been done in the district, and also some literature around just what are some of the best practices and rural education and regionalization from, other places, other states, other rural regions around the US. So our 5-step process basically that we're working through is we're working through right now. We're doing the analysis of all the data that was collected both in the historical work and in phase 1, which was conducted by the Mass Association of Regional Schools last year. We're going to be using all of that to do projections into the future, trying to get a sense of what enrollment will look like, how that impact finances. And then we're going to be generating what I refer to as the universe of possibilities, all the options, and we're listening to every idea that people might have around possible configurations, solutions, educational programs that they want to see, efficiencies where you see efficiencies. And then we're going to be taking that universe of possibility and evaluating those which we think have the highest promise, and then modeling those based on the projections that we've established in step 2, which is if we believe that enrollment is heading in a direction and finances are heading in a particular direction, how do these particular solutions impact both the ability to maintain programs, maintain enrollment, and present a budget that is fiscally sustainable to your towns. All this, again, is going to be this idea of community engagement and really going out into the community to listen to folks is going to be of high importance to this particular project. Ultimately, as we found out in Southern Berkshire, it all has to head back to the towns for support and approval, as Cheryl pointed out at the very beginning. So by engaging folks, I think early and throughout this process, any possible solutions that the steering committee thinks are of high promise, we hope by really introducing and building those with the community that they're more likely to stick when we bring those forward as preferred possibilities. All right, I'll just move forward a little bit through some of these slides. We'll work in these domains. I've already sort of outlined these: educational quality, finance, looking at the facilities and operations. I was looking at personnel today, spent some time sort of understanding, who's doing what at the various schools, what the role types are. Lots of community engagement. We'll be looking at any sort of regulatory or, looking at the collective bargaining agreements to see how things line up. And then I think continuing to do advocacy. We've already heard in steering committees and some of the community meetings that we've had that, obviously the state's got to help out, and we all understand that that's going to be something that we have, and we'll continue to advocate for. And, the rural aid bills that are in front that have been presented, and actually the fact that rural aid has, really increased in the last few years is a sign that the advocacy is paying off, with still lots of work and lots of hopefully progress still to make. And the question ultimately is there a solution? We're organizing our work into 3 stages, just so you kind of know what the timeline looks like. Again, as I mentioned, we're just doing all the context work right now. So we're thinking about between now and the end of this particular school year, we'll be doing all this outreach work, all the data work, all the creation work, the historical look back. And then we'll have a full context by hopefully the time that school ends up, closes for this particular school year. We're going to spend the summer doing a lot of the option generation, which is really understanding what the data is saying to us, what the community provided for us, in the engagement outreach sessions. Then ultimately, when we get into the fall and winter of next year, we'll be doing the modeling, which is really understanding what the implications of the various solutions are, so that we can identify which might be of high promise. And hopefully, maybe there's 1 or 2 or 3 preferred options that can be, really leaned into. We've got a full work plan on the website, so I'm not going to go through all of it. These are some of the things that we're doing right now. You all are key stakeholders, so I would consider you one of the groups that we're working with. We're meeting with every single select board and or finance committee. We're meeting with school groups over the next month, faculty and staff. So anyways, some things that are happening. I just highlighted a few things, some of the data collection we're doing, but you can go on the website. The work plan is right on the front page. You're welcome to review it in more detail. And again, as I've worked with Ellie and Martha and Cheryl as a leadership team, we understand that there's going to be a high degree of need to be adaptable and flexible as we work through this process, because there may be leads that move us sideways or front ways. And we just want to be able to understand that we don't have a rigid plan. We have a plan that's going to need to, that will adapt to, I think the interests and ideas that are generated out of your community. I won't go through the list of tasks, but I did want to call out the steering committee. We have a steering committee that met a couple of weeks ago for the first time, and I'll flash up the list in just a minute. The steering committee is committed to working with our research team as thought partners. They'll be reviewing and helping us to work through our work plan and ultimately critiquing and providing feedback on the various reports. As we generate those, they're going to help us to evaluate options. So we'll be developing some evaluation, rubrics and metrics to help understand which of the options make the most sense. And then they'll be serving as obviously advocates and to communicate to and from the community and representing various stakeholders within the community. This is the steering committee, I believe, as it stands right now. I think this is accurate. You can correct me, Cheryl, if I forgot everybody, if I have anyone wrong. But I know we have one open seat, and we are really we're tasked with identifying someone from every single town, which we have, except for Ashfield at this point. And then just so we, and I've got to update this slide because we're going to transition the name of subcommittees to, we're going to call them advisory committees. And we're preparing right now to launch some advisory committees, and we want the advisory committee to be composed, obviously, of folks from the steering committee, but we also want these to be composed from people from the community. I found when I worked in South County, there were some really incredible, strong finance folks who either came out of industry, had training and experience in the finance area, and or were sitting on the finance committees in their towns. And they provided some incredible feedback to us as we were developing fiscal methodologies, assessment methodologies throughout that project. So we hope we'll get the same sort of public interest as we develop these advisory committees. We have on the front of the website, at the very top right now, there's a request for folks who might want to serve on advisory committees. There's a little drop box. You just give us your name and your interest area. Right now, we're thinking about launching 3. One is going to be community engagement outreach. The second one will be educational quality, and the third will be finance. And we may ultimately have one that looks at operations or maybe other features. So if you're interested in serving, let us know, and we'll, as we organize these groups, we will gladly invite you to those meetings. This is our team. Our team is composed of some folks you may know. The Abrahams group is involved in your finance work in phase 1. Russell Dupre is your current attorney, and he'll be helping. He's worked with us in South County and some other projects. And then we've got folks working on the ed quality and the historical work. And obviously Mary Nash is on the call today, helping us with community engagement. We did send you a link, and I will send it again tomorrow through Terry to you all with a link to this presentation so you have it, because I know it's a lot to take in just 20 minutes. But we're really curious on sort of some opening prompts to help us to guide our work. And I just highlighted a couple of these, but there's, I think, 7 or 8 questions on this open-ended survey that we sent you all. And some of those are just, tell us a little bit about your perspectives as relate to the strengths of the district, where you see challenge spots or tension spots, what you want to make sure we pay attention to as we do this work. And if you have any particular questions you'd like us to address or topics you'd like us to address, we're happy to do that. The SurveyMonkey link is right here. And I will, again, Mary, maybe you can put this in the chat right now so folks can get to it, but I'll make sure you get this presentation tomorrow. The email will have a direct link to the SurveyMonkey in there, and we really hope to get some feedback from you all on your thoughts. So with that said, I know that was a lot. That was quite a sprint. I did it in 22 minutes. So And people who've heard it for 4 times are probably getting sick of me saying the same things over, but we really appreciate you all being here tonight, and I'm happy to entertain any questions or entertain any comments you may have.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that overview, and we're excited to have such a ambitious project and so many members of our 8 towns engaged in it. And thank you, Paul Hollings, for stepping forward for Shelburne to be part of that. We look forward to hearing more as you plunge into that work. Since we have a few minutes left and we have the Finance Committee here, I just wanted to offer you the opportunity to ask a question or share any thoughts that you have if you'd like to.
Yeah, thanks. That was super helpful. Just one, obviously you're still early in the process here. So, Matt Poplin, member of the Finance Committee, Shelburne. Can you just give some examples of conclusions you came to in other communities that had similar situations? Maybe costs were going up, enrollment was coming down. Like, can you give 3 or 4 tangible examples of recommendations you all gave kind of at the end of the engagement?
Yeah, well, I mean, there were, in South County, we were asked as part of that project to actually generate a recommendation, a single recommendation, and we did that. That recommendation actually involved the consolidation of 2 regional districts. One was composed of 5 towns, the other 3 into a single 8-town region. We did that because of some really what we thought compelling educational advantages around consolidation, efficiencies around access to services and programs and things like that. Very simply, an example would be 2 high schools becoming 1 high school and combining their full inventory of courses so all kids had access to those courses, increasing vocational opportunities in a larger high school, things of that sort. On the finance side, we also found savings and efficiencies by bringing the 2 districts together. Everything from, class size balancing. And the easiest way for me to explain class size balancing is if you got 2 high schools and you're offering AP advanced placement calculus, one high school has 5 kids and the other has 6. You're paying a teacher, 2 teachers to teach a section of calculus. It could be taught by 1 teacher in 1 section. And so you can look at efficiencies around class size balancing. And that was one of the recommendations we made as part of that particular study as a specific recommendation.
That's helpful. And then does that also result in fewer teachers in that situation? Did it end up with fewer teachers? Was that one of the results?
Yeah, that was one of the results. We did have a reduction in staffing. And again, we mapped that. One of the things I was looking at today was sort of the range of folks you have, how long they've been working. We looked at in South County, sort of also migrations or attrition levels. So you can have some teachers who are retiring, some who there's a natural sort of flow in and out in a given year of teachers just for a variety of reasons, whether it's family or career, moving out of a district. And so we actually came to the conclusion that most of that, those reductions could be accomplished over a set of years without any layoffs, any reduction. And it would be a reduction in force, but it wouldn't result in anyone losing their job. It would be managed through natural attrition. We also looked pretty comprehensively at the apportionment of the assessment methodologies. So we spent quite a bit of time designing a very novel assessment methodology in South County, which I'd be happy if any of the finance committees wanted to talk through that at some point. You certainly could. You have yours, and that's fine. Everyone has to do the regulatory methodology, but it's really the spending over required that really you have options to apportion out using alternative methodologies. You can certainly do the whole package as an alternative methodology, but you got to get that approved every single year by every town and by the commissioner, and that would be unrealistic. So usually everyone has got a Part A and a Part B. Part A is regulatory and Part B is what you spend above. So we could do, one of the things that the finance subcommittee in South County, and I think this advisory committee could do, is deep dive a little bit more into sort of how does school finance work? You know, how does your current methodology work in terms of apportionment? You know, that might be something that folks would find interesting and might be worth looking at.
Thanks.
Rick, did you have questions or thoughts?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. My only question is, when might we expect to come to a next sort of threshold with this project where we would hear more about it?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're doing all the initial outreach to sort of explain folks what we're doing. And we're actually doing a lot more of that than we did in Southern Berkshire. And I think that was really an intentional decision of the leadership team, this 2 school committees, saying, we really want to make sure that folks are engaged and know what we're up to here. And I think this is a great first step. We'll be generating likely a set of reports that we'll start to introduce to the steering committee. I'd say probably at the start of the summer. I mean, there'll be bits and pieces probably between now and then. And then at some point, you know, we will then be sort of running through what I'll develop some sort of list of possible options that we'll be evaluating with the steering committee, and that will ultimately then end up in some sort of synthesized report that says these are the things that we think have high promise, and because of these particular reasons, you know, that it will save money, it will provide educational advantage, it will, you know, it will cut down on facilities costs, whatever we, you know, if that happens to be the conclusion. So those will be produced in the summer. What we'd like to do is come back out in the fall. And once we have some ideas and options that have been thinned down, we'd like to re-engage people again and say, okay, here's some ideas and options that seem to be promising. Why don't you give us your feedback on them, react to those for us? Because what we know is if there are things, again, that are non-negotiables, which people will, let's say, for example, that some of these changes require adjustments to the regional agreement, and then the regional agreement will have to get, you know, redrafted and reapproved by the towns. It won't pass if there's non-negotiables and that people a particular town disagrees with. And that's actually where we landed in South County. I think we had some great momentum, a very strong set of arguments. We did it in concert. Their board was 24 people because it was formed under state regulation, so it required 3 people per town. And we had 4 towns voted in favor and 4 vote against. But of the 4 that voted against, 3 were very close to split votes and 1 was overwhelmingly against. So there were some things in there that were non-negotiables that I think folks struggled with. And one of those was a recommendation that we combine the 2 high schools. And so that meant that one of the communities was going to lose their high school, and it was going to be absorbed into a larger high school that was going to be, you know, remodeled or reconstructed. And even though it made sense educationally, even though we showed how it worked financially, the emotional and cultural connection to that high school were hard to get past. Well, they were not just hard, it really led to the failed vote. So, so I think going back out, it's a long-winded answer to your question, which is, you know, where are there going to be touch points? I think the next really big touch point will probably be in the fall when we start to really look at options. We want to go back out to the community to get your feedback. But between now and then, you know, we're happy to come and provide updates to the select boards anytime you want. I've been asked this question, how will we hear? We're going to produce a monthly update that will be circulated to the towns, hopefully through all the distribution methods, through the schools, through your local newsletters, through hopefully the town post boards. We've got a Facebook page up now. We've got an Instagram page. We're trying to put out as much as we can so folks are aware.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And Willow or Cheryl, do you have any closing remarks, or are you all set?
I'm all
Mm.
set. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was gonna say, I don't have anything more than just to reiterate that, the school committee is very much behind this, and I look forward to also sharing information however it makes sense through communication, subcommittee, and the school committee itself. So,
Great.
and also always available if there's questions along the way.
good. Well, thanks. And
Thank you so much.
we'll look forward to the next touch point. But thank you all for keeping us in the loop on your project.
Thanks for having us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll send you a follow-up tomorrow. Thank you.
Great.
Andrew, can I just ask a procedural question? On the
Sure.
agenda, under new business, you have the Mohawk Trail 911 or use of surplus.
Yes. Did you
Did
want
you
to speak to that while you're here?
No, I'm gonna reach out to Bill Latoy, my business manager. So, sorry, as I said, my son's puppy is not very well behaved. So I'm thinking after 7 o'clock. Yes.
Yeah, we have two
Okay.
more appointments, and then if he shows up after that, we can take him as we get there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a
Okay.
lot, Cheryl. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Great. Well, we're more or less on schedule, and is Julie Moreno here?
Yes, I am.
There you are, Julie. Okay. We are on to the Senior Center's budget presentation. Take us away.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for supporting the seniors in the area and supporting us. Talking of support, I have an entourage with me. I have Penny Spearance, Sue Bishop, Nancy Brewer, and excuse me, Sylvia Smith, Shelburne Council on Aging, who have been part of this process. So they're here to also support and answer any questions. So I
Excellent.
thought what I could do is just, what I'd like to do is go over how I came up with the assessments and explain service units, because that can be confusing, and then jump right into the overall budget and how I constructed it and what happened with what. So do we have does Finance Committee have the 4-page budget?
Are you there, Finance Committee?
Yes, we do. We're muted.
Okay.
Okay. So skip the, I like to do the construction highlights, but I'll kind of explain those as I go. So if we can jump right to page A1, which really breaks down the municipal assessments for FY25. And I'll just give you a brief kind of overview. So Shelburne, being our fiscal agent, did, increase salaries for FY25. And for the first time in quite a long time, health insurance and other benefits went up. So I was basically looking at almost 12,000 I had to deal with before I even touched anything else. So that was a piece. So the way the assessments, just as a review, are developed is really looking at service units. So if everyone there on the finance committee came to my yoga class and you came once every week, and you would be 52 hours each. You're one person. So I just like to start off to explain that. I don't count you per se 52 times. I count you once, but the units and the hours that you used could have been 52. So that's where that number comes in. So when the service units are done, and at the end, I'll kind of talk about my senior center, but how we have the data throughout the year and how I differentiate it. We take what the total service units, in other words, how many people in Shelburne were active in doing activities this year, and that comes with a 5-year average. So we're obviously we're out of the COVID era, but we're still climbing. So when I come up with the units And the percentages, that's really being generated by each town, the data we have, how many times, how many members, how many people were involved with each town, and then how often they participated. So obviously Shelburne went up. During 2022, it kind of dipped down. So last year it kind of dipped down. This year, 2023 is really reflecting both pieces, where we still were not closed, but had difficulty getting people in. Now, remember, we lost some folks during that time, but we're gaining new membership. We're also not opening to 60 plus, coming in for meals, but we're doing the to-go. So there's a combination, and I'm really hoping by this time next year, the utilization numbers for folks will raise and we'll continue to have new members. So Shelburne went down in a bit in outreach and phone calls, but that's because people were in the center utilizing services. So that's how I came up with the unit percentages. And now explain the town assessment. So if you go to the second page or third, A2 is the consortium budget for 2025. It also will give you an idea of 2024. So overall, again, like I said, 4% increase salaries, 8% increase in benefits, health insurance and benefits. So what I did was take the formula grant. Every town gets a formula grant from the state based on not how many people are active, but how many people you have in your census that are 60 and over. So taking that number, each town gets a minimum of $7,000. And then after that, they raise it depending on. I will be honest with you, after the census, I didn't think they'd raise it again, but they did raise it this year. So we got an increase of about $4,600. Excuse me. So what I did was, looking at, if you look at the top, director and outreach coordinator salaries, so those would have gone up. So what I did was I took the formula grant and applied it mainly to director and outreach salaries, and then any of the other grants. I've received more grants this year. So anywhere I can, I'm putting it under other grants, because as you can see, there's what the town pays for, then with our FRTA contract, what FRTA contributes towards overall functioning, and then other grants. Other grants include the formula grant. They also include the Office of Elder Affairs grant that I got for hybrid programming. And it also includes the caregiver grants we get through LifePath. So I can utilize those to kind of offset. So ideally, that's where I kind of save towns a really big bump by going through and assess and putting them on the salaries. So overall salary subtotal is only 4,000, which could have been a little bit more. So I tried to offset that. So if you go down, benefits obviously went up. I did make a mistake. FY24, that should be about, that's less. But the 71,291 for this year proposed benefits is accurate. So that also goes onto the front page with the salaries. And then the operating costs. So what I really do is look at utilization. And I think that's on one of the pages that I gave you, the construction highlights. So I look at where we're at right now. And I look at, okay, I'm 6 months in, I've used 50% here. I've used 80%, 82% of fuel. So that's how I look at, I'm looking at what I've actually utilized. So every month I keep track of where we're at, what we have, what's kind of above, what's under. The only things that are really popping up are things like oil, but under operating, we pay Shelburne admin a very small piece to be our fiscal agent, to do all the work, the payroll, the finances, my timesheets, the everything. So that's what that cost is. And that obviously goes up based on the percentage of our overall budget. The only other thing, the computers I did raise because I have Zoom now. So along with the grant, which I not only have the ability to pay a few extra hours for staff, I actually have the computer that I'm on right now, for hybrid, and I'm getting 5 iPads and the computer classes. So when I get a grant, I'm trying to offset costs, but I'm looking specifically at operating. So part of our in-kind of this grant was that we would buy Zoom. So Zoom and the new licenses, that's why that's about $300 more this year. Internet, email, copier, web. I had to attach some email accounts to my my Zooming and my licenses to do the hybrid and to give it to instructors who are also facilitating offsite for our seniors. So that went up about $250. And then, so overall operating costs went up almost $2,000, a little less. And then if you go down to facilities, really, there was only 2 areas I had to look at. Facilities, you know, you have rent, which we're renegotiating with the Masons this coming year. And again, the only difference with that, the Masons used to, I believe, pay 10% of utilities. And they don't do that. So we pay rent. So I'd really like rent to hold at that, but we'll be negotiating that in the next 2 months. Heat I did put up because it's climbing. So even though the town has locked in a certain amount per gallon, which is awesome, it has gone up. And the more people we have in here, that does increase. So that went up. And the only other thing that I put up were supplies. As people come in, one of the things I'm trying to do for safety, but also for people to feel confident that it's a safe site, is really investing and making sure I now have Centus. They're the cleaning company. So I'm getting disinfectant. I'm getting everything on a rotating basis. And it's that. And also for my vacuum cleaner died. So we had to work on something like, so I have like older equipment, but supplies just wasn't enough. And that's why I put that. So when you take the salaries, the benefits, the operating, and then the facilities, that's how on the very A1 page, they're broken down. And that's how I came up with the amounts and then applied the percentages based on utilization, the unit percentages of folks. And that's how I came up with the numbers. The rest of the pages that I've supplied is so that you can understand what I'm babbling about. So there is a page of all the salaries, so you can see how I separated them. And the only thing with some of the grants, they're kind of clumped right now, only because this is a awesome older Excel format. So I broke a formula, but I fixed it. So, you know, looking towards next year, my hope is to get more grants to offset salary, but also more grants for supplies, you know, things that we can keep forever that are part of it. So that is how I translated everything onto this. And my goals for this year, I feel like I could have increased outreach. I really felt the need because outreach is we're one of the few consortiums, we're one of the few towns that actually has an outreach coordinator. So really the goal is to continue to provide these resources and services that people would have to go to Greenfield or farther or get on a waiting list to do. So to be able to duplicate those services from housing and, excuse me, RMV and fuel assistance, we're utilizing every piece. And so utilizing the caregiver grant that we received through the Mass Council on Aging, I can get that every year. That will defray outreach costs, but it also has provided an extra day in the caregiver programming for the residents of Shelburne. And, you know, that's been one of the fastest growing programs that we have actually right now. So that's kind of the overview, how I came up with it. I think it's pretty reasonable. the way it all worked out, considering the salary and the benefits. So it will be kind of grant dependent, but I also, you know, as I told you last year, I really wanted to make sure that we were completely transparent so you could see exactly where the money's coming for what and why the town is being assessed at this rate. That's a really quick overview. So I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you, Julie. Do any of your co-conspirators have anything they want to add to that presentation? It's Penny, yes? You're muted. You're muted, Penny.
Sorry. I wanted to clarify one thing Julie said. Shelburne's percentage went down slightly this year. That's not because participation went down. Participation increased, but the other towns' participation increased even more. So that makes our percentage just a tad smaller.
Great.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you for that. And I just a quick question on the facilities. What is the meaning of the FRTA and the negative $730?
So that's how do I explain that? An overflow. So where are you at?
The bottom of the budget.
Because that's already, you know what, I'll look at that for next year, Andrew. I don't even know why that should be there. Because while they're 5% for utilities, it's already reflected up in what we get for some of the other things. So that actually shouldn't be there.
Okay,
So that's a good catch.
thanks. Finance Committee, do you have questions or thoughts for the senior center? If you were saying something, I couldn't hear you.
Terry, does the allocation that we're getting to Shelburne for the administrative costs, does that cover the actual administrative costs for whatever we're supposed to be doing?
You
Did
mean
you-
the Shelburne's assessment, does that cover?
I was at a question to Terry. Does the assessment that we receive cover our expenses? However we calculate those?
Yes.
Thanks.
Other questions or thoughts from the Finance Committee?
Nope.
All right, Rick, how about you?
That's a whole bunch of numbers, and I would defer to the number brains that we have sitting at the large table there in the finance room. I will say that was a very coherent, well-explained overview, I must say, of the ones I've witnessed to date. So well done.
Thank you, Rick, because I blew it last year, so I had to step up this time.
Well, Julie, I just have one curiosity. Thank you for the explanation of how you calculate participation. That's always helpful. And you all are very detailed and meticulous about that. But I'm just curious, as you have managed this 3-town senior center for a few years, and your board has been there for probably quite a few years. What explains the split between the 3 towns in terms of those general participation rates, which have held at those levels, I would say, for many years? And I know why Ashfield would be at 21%, but Shelburne and Buckland are about the same size as communities, and the senior center is really just a stone's throw from the Buckland side. So I'm just curious what your explanation of those differences is.
I have been exploring that. That's why the marketing piece, asking an extra $600 for the newsletter, which I snuck at. It's difficult because each town has its own personality. And I don't think it's necessarily by town necessarily, Andrew. I think Ashfield has a lot of folks that like to be independent, and they have a harder time, like many Ashfield people come here, and we only have 2 or 3 satellite activities up in Ashfield. So a big piece of that, and that's why I'm calling Ashfield people throughout this next year. I have the town listing, I'm just calling cold. So a lot of this is perception, and I think perception of the senior center, and I heard it today from someone in Shelburne who said, I don't know if I'm a member, you know, I'm like, if you live here, you're a member. So it's the perception as well, saying, well, yeah, I turned like 65, but I'm not a senior yet. I don't want to, I'm like, we don't drop off the end of the earth. So I think part of it is changing the perception of that. And Ashfield's personality is very much, we take care of our own. So kind of growing that, and honestly, through 2020 to right up to this past year, there was a significant amount of deaths. And I think, so I'm trying to strike while the iron's hot of, yeah, this is, we're leaving the pandemic, and we're leaving a lot of restrictions, but now we're trying to open up into different ideas. So this is the time I can fit things in. Ashfield residents, for the most part, seniors are just a little bit more resistant to that, but we're getting there. And I think it's just getting really creative of having wellness and education and social, and just kind of having the rounded, because I think a big piece is a lot of seniors were saying, I don't know where I fit in what you have. And that's why the marketing piece and the newsletter, and I put in more for copier and mailing postage. You know, I want to have the ability to do mailings. It's one of the few people to reach folks in the rural areas, and it's more individual. And you know, our saying here is one by one, because it really does take. Today I got 2 new members because I talked to them on the phone, and they can, who knows what they're going to come for. And again, it's just a reminder for towns that just because you have a certain number of people who are over 60, and that reflects in the formula grant, every single town gets that. I only bill, or I only project and do my data on people who are actually participating. So in the end, it's almost the same, because all 3 towns are pretty much in the same spot with about 700 seniors. I'm like, okay, if I've serviced 700 and I have 2,100, you know, where do we go from here? So it's this constant attempt, but there's many people, and yeah, people who are in the village have an easier time to access, but that's a smaller number. You know, Shelburne is very large. So there's convenience for the people on the other side of the bridge in Buckland, and in the village here, they can just pop in, which is harder, obviously, for Ashfield, other parts of Shelburne, and other parts of Buckland. So it kind of evens out that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to speculate, just the size of the village on the Shelburne side, and the fact that we have Highland Village would, you know, probably account for some of that skew in terms of, you know, convenience of access. If it's true that those folks who live nearby are the larger users of the services. So anyway, I'm just, you know,
Yeah.
I'm just curious, and
And not
Yeah.
always, and not
Yeah.
like the walking club up at Cowell Gym. I have more people coming from Charlemont and Ashfield than I do from Shelburne.
Yeah.
So, and there's a huge number, you know, that are walking. So it's, I think with the coming year, and knowing that the district piece will be more heavily pursued this coming year. That's why my goal for this year is just looking at that. It is starting to take, you know, at Buckland just an hour ago, and their question was, well, how do you know, people who are in other areas who we're providing service for? So it's obviously a very, very, very small percentage, but I am tracking that. And also, I think was asked, are some of the new members that have signed in Shelburne just turning 60 or 65? And ironically, it's not, and that's something I'll start tracking. But less than 1% were new. These are people that have lived here and just didn't know they could do these activities. So that's why I'm putting more emphasis on the marketing piece. And the My Senior Center, this is the last year where we had, if you remember last year, we had the old Coates system. And then they didn't translate a lot of those things. So when I got my senior center, we're starting from scratch of entering people. So to do data for this year, it's Coates, the 2 months in between where I had paper, and then my senior center. So next year, we'll be able to click a button and have reports on all different towns and who utilized what, like I have now, but not as all in one place. So
Great.
the goal is to just keep increasing that and getting more people in with fun stuff.
Good. Well, I was just going to say, as you're looking to increase your marketing and kind of open things up again now that COVID is less of a threat than it used to be, I would encourage you to use the Two-Town News and the Ashfield
submitted.
News. Good. All right. I mean, just as other venues to reach
Yeah.
out to people who might want to think about your services in new ways,
No, it definitely, the Two-Town is very valuable. West County Shopper, believe it or not, I have people call that may not get the newsletter in time and they see West County Shopper. Also, I've started, you can write your own press release and send it to the recorder and they'll pretty much put it in as if they interviewed you. So really, that's my goal for this coming year, is really kind of marketing and getting folks of saying, it's not your mom's senior center, but it can be what you want to make of it. And that's why I think partnering with a lot of people we have, the open space committee and the libraries, and it really does make more community, and that's, made a difference. And that's the goal in the coming year, that and really supporting the district endeavors.
Great. Well, thank you all for all of your efforts and for your presentation, and good luck in the year ahead.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Do we have Karen Tonelli here? There's Karen. And I
Yes.
see Maya Winfrey. Are there any other assessors present? Good. Well, Karen is going to talk to us about the assessor's budget, I think, or who wants to lead off there?
Sure, I'll go ahead and start.
Okay.
I think certainly we can talk about the budget, but specifically, I prepared to talk about a request for significant sum of money, funds for a special appraisal. But if I could just introduce myself to those that may not know me. My name is Karen Tonelli, and I'm the assistant assessor. Joel Dwight could not be here. He had a conflict with another meeting, but he did ask me to read a statement. So if I could start off with that. So Joel says, I regret not being able to join you on this Zoom meeting due to another commitment. In my opinion, we should very seriously consider engaging the services of Sansucci Associates to conduct an appraisal of Shelburne's portion of the hydroelectric facilities along the Deerfield River. Sansucci has provided appraisal, valuation, assessment services in this industry since 1990. And they're also very involved in regulatory consulting, licensing, permitting, and engineering. So they have a multifaceted knowledge related to this type of property. They are currently conducting business in 20 states across the country. The cost of their services will be significant. However, an accurate appraisal of the hydroelectric holdings related to Shelburne could provide a meaningful return in the way of taxes paid to the town. He goes on to say, we need to consider this carefully. There is no guarantee of the hydro company willing to accept a new appraisal that would raise their levy of their tax obligation. This in turn could result in litigation, which would require further expense on behalf of the town. Based on what I know now, I think we have a realistic opportunity to increase the amount of tax dollars we can raise through an accurate and fair assessment of the hydroelectric facilities. And in doing so, be able to reduce the amount of tax burden placed upon our residents. I recommend allocation of funds to further pursue this outcome. So that's from Joel. you know, again, specifically with respect to our request, just so that everybody knows, the last time these properties were appraised by a specialty appraiser was in FY 22, which was when Shelburne had their last reval. Revals now are every 5 years, so Shelburne will have another reval in FY 27. And I bring this up because I think it's important that everybody knows that the only time the Department of Revenue asks us to hire somebody to value these special use properties is in a reval year. So we're not in a reval year in FY 25. But I think that in talking to the board, we think it would be appropriate to have somebody take a look at the valuation of these facilities. We are looking at, in case anybody doesn't know, and I'm trying to familiarize myself as well, we own half of the Gardner Falls Dam. We own half of the Deerfield Dam number 2, half of Deerfield Dam number 3, and we own Deerfield number 4 substation. Those are all assets owned by Great River Hydro. And from what I can tell, it seems to be well over 7 megawatts of power. I can't really tell about the allocation. I'm still learning that in terms of who we share what with. But included in this quote for services would also be the appraisal of what we call the 504s, which are the transmission distribution of electricity. So that's Eversource and that's New England Power. So technically 5 components of assessments, you know, each one of our assets, real estate and personal property that I just described, plus the real estate and personal property of Eversource. I wanted to also make note of a directive from the DOR. The last time we had a reval, and this is not unusual, they will make suggestions for the next time around, what they would like to see from towns, what we can improve upon. They did mention if outsourcing the valuation of hydroelectric generating plants to a private appraiser, the Board of Assessors should establish a firm timeline dealing with all aspects of valuation to be completed. I'm assuming because maybe in 22 there were some delays in setting the tax rate, waiting for this to be done. So they should leave ample time to complete the certification and set the tax rate. Also, the town should strongly consider ordering an appraisal report as opposed to a restricted appraisal report as defined by USPAP. This also kind of shows me that what the town decided to do in FY 22, town, the assessors, both together, was having a restricted appraisal done on these properties. And what that means is it's usually much less money, but it's an appraisal report that doesn't contain all of the back information, data, research that was used to come up with the number. The appraiser is supposed to keep that on hand. But the important thing to note about a restricted appraisal is that if you are challenged, if we had been challenged, or I guess still could be challenged on this valuation, we would have had to have paid somebody to do a full-blown regular appraisal anyway, because a restricted appraisal can't be used in court. It's just not enough data there. So what we're proposing is a full-blown, complete appraisal to be done on these properties. I do have a quote from the Sanssouci, which was referenced in Joel's email. He is the industry expert at this point, has a lot of experience. He's an engineer as well as an appraiser. He's offering 2 options: a 1-year contract, which he will value everything that I outlined for FY 25 for $45,000, or he is offering a 3-year contract where he would value all of these properties for FY 25, 26, and 27, ending in 27, which is the year that we would need to have it done anyway. for 27.5 a year. So it's a significant amount of money, but I also know to have it done right, it's a significant amount of work. He would have to value these facilities in full in order to then determine what Shelburne's allocations are. So in other words, you have to kind of find out what the asset is worth as a whole, and then determine for each one of these, you know, half of the dam would be X amount. And so significant amount of work. Just to give you guys some idea on valuation, it appears as though the last appraiser, and this is what we are assessing, is assessing Great River Hydro and personal property for about 6.2 million. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4 separate parcels and then a personal property. Personal property being probably the turbines and the machinery inside. And again, just so you guys know, on the 504s, that's our utilities. He did not value, the person that we hired in 22 did not value those. I don't know where this value is coming from. So, but that is 27 million. So to have someone outside take a look at those assets, you know, we're really talking a significant assessment. So I'm not sure about procurement and how that would work. I mean, obviously Terry would probably help with that as far as being able to enter into a contract for 45,000 if that were the choice. I don't know if we'd have to go out to bid. So that is something that I haven't looked at, and I think we would make sure that we're, you know, in compliance with the law on that. So that's pretty much the presentation and what we wanted to share with others so that it could be a cohesive decision. And again, the point that Joel makes is, you know, that it may be decided that this is the right thing to do. But it's been my experience that when the assessments increase, that the companies will fight. So there's the back cost of that as well.
Thank you for that overview. I have just a couple of clarifying questions before I open it up. In terms of the 1 year versus the 3-year option, I guess one question is, are you recommending one versus the other yourselves? And second question is, if we were to do the 1 year option, would we likely be needing to come back and do that again in the reval year?
Exactly, Andrew, exactly. So that's why I lean towards the 3-year. Again, with the 3-year, you know, it sort of equalizes the payment. I think from the appraiser standpoint, he's going to have to do most of the work in that first year. And then he simply, in years 2 and 3, he updates. So the majority of the work is done initially, all the information gathering. I know he'll visit all of the facilities. You know, the heavy lifting is done in year 1, which is why the 45,000. But you're right, we will be required in FY27 by the DOR to have an appraisal done. So does it make sense to, you know, pay 45 this year, wait a year, have nothing changed, and then pay 45 in FY27? I think not. So the other thing to be mindful of is that each taxpayer each and every year has the opportunity to contest their assessment. So that makes sense towards the 3-year, because again, if they file and contest, then you know they'll most likely file and contest each year, and you're going to want to have an appraisal to be ready to support your value.
Maya, are you the only assessor here tonight? Do you have anything you want to add to that? You're muted. You're
Oh.
muted.
We can't hear you.
Thank you. I couldn't figure out how to mute or unmute. Okay. What was your question?
Oh, just if you had anything you wanted to add before I take questions.
I think it just from based on our conversations with the other assessors that we have the sense that it would be great to be getting the taxes from this company if they're making a lot of money here in our town, that we should know what that is about, what the value of their property is, and so that we can be levying the proper taxes and our town can be taking the benefit of that. And so if this is it sounds like it might be something of a tedious process, but that it's what we need to do just to be fiscally responsible.
Great.
Yeah,
Finance Committee, do you have questions or thoughts for the assessors?
Yeah, maybe a few questions. Hey, Karen, this is Matt Popley. Just to understand what the baseline of the savings mean, how much we were trying to spend X amount of dollars through these assessments, through these engagement to save how much dollars or increase taxes by how much dollars. So what is the collective amount of tax that these groups pay per year, just as like a baseline?
oh goodness, I have not calculated that. I can just tell you that, NSTAR, Eversource, and New England Power alone at 27 million, they've got to be our largest taxpayer. I haven't calculated the actual taxes. As far as doing a cost benefit analysis, that's almost impossible because appraisers and assessors, we take courses in something called USPAP, where we can't let our decisions on the value of a property be influenced by anything other than the data and the methodology that we're taught to look at. So I couldn't even guess as far as what value this might come up with, if it'd be higher or lower. To Maya's point, though, as assessors, we simply look at it very simply, which is every single taxable property in town has to be assessed at its fair market value. And so it doesn't matter if you're Eversource or if you're, someone on Main Street, or if you're a local business, that's the structure that we look at. So to the extent that we would like Great River and Eversource valued, I think it's just that it hasn't been done, and perhaps it hasn't been done as robustly as we think it should be done by an experienced appraiser in this field who knows these assets.
Well, Karen, if I could just jump in there, we're assessing them at the 13
right
per thousand.
Yep. You do the math? Did you do the math?
Yeah, I'm just trying to do that now, but
Sure.
well, Matt,
So
you
again,
can do the math. You're on the Finance Committee. What's
yeah.
what's the tax rate times 27 million?
7 million times points.
I think it's 14,600.
But is that all of Shelburne? That's all of Shelburne?
The 27 million is not all of Shelburne. That is the assets for NSTAR and New England Power, which is one aspect that he would be valuing. But Great River Hydro, that's about 6.2 million, according to the last guy that we hired.
So
And that's the
33
whole
million times the
breakdown.
tax rate.
Yeah,
Right, so basically 6.2 million times $13,000
$1,000 a year. And we would be spending 35,000 to try to get, in the hopes that 86,000 would be increased to, pick a number, by 10%, 20%. I mean, it's not gonna be 50%, right? It'll be some reasonable percentage, I guess, off that 86 when you do these assessments. I assume it doesn't double, right? It's unlikely that it'll double. It'll
Well,
be,
I can only speak from experience. So in Montague, I had hired Skip Sansucci to just value our N-Star New England. That was in 2019. He used this new methodology, which the courts have approved. And we saw an increase of 11 million in assets. So I spent, I don't know, say he charged us about 30,000. And the actual increase in taxes was 312,000 that year. And then the next year and the year after and the year after, because don't forget, you can't really just look at it as this is what we'll make this one year. This is what we're going to make or tax increase value in the future.
no, completely understand. The question I think is just, what do we think the tax increase opportunity is relative to what we're spending? I guess it's the question. Because as an example, we wouldn't go and spend $35,000 to go assess a home or one building in town, right? Because you'd say, oh, that's crazy. The likely assessment increase will never make up for the 35,000. So I was just trying to put into context, like, what do we think the potential is to spend the 35,000?
What is the gain for the expense?
I'm not sure where you're getting 35,000. The options are 45,000 for a single year appraisal and 27,500 a year for 3 years, which is about 82.5 over 3 years.
Look at the 35,000, the request for 25.
Yeah.
I don't know what that. The request form we got shows $35,000.
Yeah.
That's the budget sheet for contracted services, Karen. You have 35,000 listed. You might have put it in before you had the actual estimate.
That's possible. Yeah, I actually have a specific contract now with Mr. Sansucci proposing the specifics. So I apologize for that. That may have been what I submitted. But what he is actually offering to do the work for is what Andrew just said.
So
what is the correct number?
Yeah, what is the?
So his appraisal is 45,000 to do it for 1 year, FY 25, or if we were to enter into a multi-year contract, it would be 27,500 for 3 years, FY 25, FY 26, and FY 27, ending in a reval year when we have to do it anyway.
82.5.
Yeah, no, it's a significant amount of money. I guess I can't even guess or suggest what it might be in terms of an increase in valuation, because you know, it isn't anything that we even have any data to show. All I could tell you is that we would be doing what we're supposed to be doing, and that is coming up with the fair market value of a taxable property.
Could I ask a question? Were other firms contacted about doing the same work?
No. There's not a lot of other firms. And so again, that's why I referenced 30B. I mean, if we have to do procurement and do a bid, certainly, you know, that would be fine as far as following that procedure. He comes to mind because he is the expert in the field. I don't know that there's anybody else that has the qualifications. Certainly the appraiser that we had done this work in 22 can't compare to the knowledge that Sansucci has. So one of the other things I wanted to throw out as a consideration of paying for this, and that is that the assessor's overlay account has significant funding in there that we certainly could release for this purpose, so that in a sense, the taxpayers wouldn't be paying for this. Those funds have already been taxed, and given the fact that there really isn't anything on the horizon for pending litigation, that money is available for other needs.
And what's the balance of the overlay account?
I think there's about 120,000 in there right now.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim, here, I have a couple of questions on it. I believe you said the appraisal we're talking about here is strictly for the hydroelectric facilities? Not just
The dams and the.
dam and substation. Right?
So Skip Sansucci is offering for this sum that we talked about to value all of the hydro facilities, the allocated ones that we have, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Plus, he would be valuing Eversource and New England Power, and that's our regulated T&D, transmission and distribution. That's the one with the 27 million valuation. So he's going to be doing both of those.
What are we asking them to appraise?
Is it just the dams?
Is it just
that
the
you have
dams or
listed
does
there?
everything?
So he'll appraise, so it's we own half of the Gardner Falls Dam. We own half of the Deerfield Dam number 2. We own half of the Deerfield Dam number 3, and we own Deerfield number 4 substation. He will be appraising those facilities in full and then allocating that amount to what is in Shelburne for those properties. In addition, he would be valuing all of the assets, real estate and personal property, and it's, it's mostly personal property with Eversource. It's substations, it's telephone poles, it's wires, it's transformers, it's everything that they own. So he'd be valuing all of that.
Okay.
So he'd be valuing roughly at current assessment about $36 million worth of stuff.
Sounds about right. If you add the hydro value and the Eversource value.
Okay.
Now,
And my rough number of the 36 million at $13 per thousand is 468,000 is the baseline number of what we're currently getting in taxes.
okay.
Am I right? Am I in the ballpark?
Well, then we get half of it, right? Because we only own half of.
Yeah,
No, we own half
no.
of the 6 million, but we own all of the 27 million.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
No?
You guys, so the 6 million is our allocated portion already.
That's our half,
That's what we
okay.
are taxing already.
So what we're currently getting is about $36 million worth of property.
Correct.
At $13 a thousand is about $468,000 in taxes. That's a very rough number that I just came up with there. But that goes to Matt's question about where are we starting from? So if the valuation that Sansucci produces over the next 3 years increases that by 10%, that would be $47,000 a year in additional taxes that we would be generating. Again, I'm just throwing out rough numbers here to give you some ballparks.
And do we know what the assessment increase was did he do it in 2022 or did someone else do it in 2022?
Somebody else did it. A local appraiser did it. A local appraiser did that restricted appraisal that the DOR said we probably should not do that again. It's really just a 4-page document.
Yeah.
So, and if I could just throw another wrinkle in there. Maybe Rick and Andrew are familiar with the governor's municipal empowerment legislation. That's just something she announced. There's a component in there where they're suggesting that the Department of Revenue value all what we call the 504s. So that would be Eversource and New England Power, that they centrally value those at the state level, which is what they do now for Verizon landline. And in fact, interestingly enough, Skip Sansucci values it for the state for all the cities and towns. So the way it works is the state values Verizon's landline, and they simply give all the towns a number and say, put this number on the tax bill. What the governor is proposing, apparently they had done a lot of outreach throughout the state, and a lot of the small town assessors said it would be helpful if we didn't have to contract someone to help us value this. And so the state very quickly took on saying that they would do this for us.
So
It's
if the
being
state,
discussed.
if that were to pass and the state were to do that, would that then mean that if Eversource wanted to contest its valuation, it would be suing the state and not the town?
So kind of close, Andrew, it would be if we wanted to contest the number that the state gave us for Eversource, we'd have to sue the state.
I
So
see.
it takes it out of the assessor's domain.
Okay.
So that's being talked about now. I think that's on the fast track to getting approved. That would change things, I would imagine. I think we'd have to go back and say, remove that component of the contracted price, and then to whoever in the finance committee had mentioned it, then we'd only be talking about him evaluating Great River Hydro or the hydros for us.
The $6 million worth of stuff.
Karen?
Exactly.
Karen?
Yes.
Part two of my question, and I never got to, the dams that we're doing evaluation or assessments on here. They're half in Shelburne, half in another town. But we have to evaluate the whole thing so that we know what happened it is. Okay, the other town is gonna have to do the same thing, aren't they?
Yes.
Is there any protection for cooperation here?
Yes, so excellent. I am looking at a proposal for property valuation services for 4 hydroelectric plants on the Deerfield River, located in the towns of Buckland, Charlemont, Conway, and Shelburne, as of FY22. Prepared by George Sansucci. It never got off the ground. I don't know how Shelburne felt about it. I talked to Sansucci and he thinks that only Charlemont was in agreement with getting on board and sharing these services. So great idea, but a little bit like herding cats, because you need to get everybody on board. And just to give you some idea of the cost, it was, I think he kind of prorated it amongst the different communities. But I did see what Shelburne's cost would have been. And again, this is neither here nor there because it's already
2
gone.
years later.
I want to say, yeah. Okay, so his fee proposal, he had Buckland owning about 57% of the hydroelectric plants, Charlemont 2%, Conway 27%, and Shelburne 14%. So then he was going to propose to charge Buckland $22,000, Charlemont $800, Conway $10,800, and Shelburne $5,560. So obviously this would have been best for us, but it never came to be.
So Karen,
The other piece of that Karen mentioned earlier was that were there to be litigation, that correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but that in your experience that towns have not been good at figuring out how to share those expenses.
Right. So my experience is with First Light and the dam, in Montague, which we share with Gill. 90% of that dam is in Montague, 10% is in Gill. First Light contests and has contested since 2014. We actually went to court when I first became an assessor there in Montague, and we won decisions for the town. However, there was a lot of back and forth as far as, who pays the legal bills, how much does each town pay, should it be the 90-10%? And then sometimes, as Maya's referring to, when you've got 4 towns in there, and perhaps there's litigation and you're trying to work out a settlement, well, everyone's out for themselves, but yet we're all connected with the same appraisal. So it just gets really, really messy. And as evidenced by the fact that we couldn't even get it off the ground as far as everyone agreeing to this. So that can be an issue as far as, you know, the shared services. At this point, this type of situation is, to me, way too late. If we're gonna have him value for FY25, he's got to get started on that so that he has an appraisal report for us sometime this fall, so that he's not holding up the tax rate and we're not in the situation where we're just waiting on one big valuation, you know, and everything else is done. So
Karen, in that regard, what kind of timeline are you looking for if we were to go forward with him or somebody like him?
So I would say that when you have your town meeting, you know, if we knew by then, we could let him know, you know, that the funds have been allocated and he can start the work.
Okay.
And then we would put a deadline in there that, you know, the appraisal would have to be finished and complete by, I think we'd be looking at sometime in October, the latest, so that we get the
Okay.
paperwork done and set our rate in November like we usually do.
And Terry, my understanding is that if we went ahead with this, we would have to go out to bid. Is that correct?
I would have to check with the procurement office just to see if there's any exceptions for this type of appraisal work.
Okay. Finance Committee, other questions?
One more for Karen.
Sure.
Karen, the town line between Buckland and Shelburne is the center of the river. The town line between between Shelburne and Conway is the west bank of the river. That puts the entire dam at number 2 in Shelburne. And a good portion of the powerhouse.
Interesting. So this information so I got this actually from Mr. Sansucci.
Take a look at your tax maps. It shows the town line on there.
Okay. So
Which
you're
one was
saying,
that?
you're saying we own the entire dam?
I'm saying somebody needs to establish exactly where the town line is.
Okay. Okay.
Good catch there, Jim. That'd be interesting to find out.
The only reason I really know that I bring it up is I've been to the Vernon Dam, which is between Hinsdale, New Hampshire and Vernon, Vermont. The state line is marked right in the floor in the center of the powerhouse.
Huh. Interesting. Okay.
Well, it'd be good to know so that we know what our value is there.
Right.
Rick,
So-
do you have, I'm sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to say, just to recap, I know it's a lot of information. I mean, we have options. We could do nothing. We could do nothing. The values would stay flat. I know everybody else's values are going up, but absent an appraisal, I can't change these numbers. So that kind of benefits these big corporations. We could do nothing. We could wait until FY27. When we have to do it, and then pay 45,000. And that's no ifs, ands, or buts. We have to do it. So therefore, let's try to get the best guy possible. You know, or we can go to bid and we can choose between the options, the 1 year or the 3 year. But I did want to throw out overlay, because I think that's a discussion that we should be having anyway, even if you choose to not want to use that money for appraisal purposes. Perhaps you guys have other ideas for those funds. I think that if the assessors put it on the agenda and we discuss it, we can really come up with a figure that we feel comfortable with releasing.
How much is in the overlay?
It's about 120, maybe 125. Dara and I just are working on reconciling it so that we have an exact. But of course, there's a lot involved in that discussion. we're not going to want to release it all if we do choose to hire an appraiser, knowing that the possibility would be great that these companies would not like the higher assessment, and therefore we may have some litigation that we would need overlay for. So it's almost like this circular type,
Right.
decision that you just kind of keep going around in circles, but
Well, you could use some and hold some back, I guess, is. you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Good. Any other questions from the Finance Committee?
Yeah, the only question would be, if someone could just maybe send us what the actual taxes being paid today are, that would be helpful, because if it's Andrew's estimate of 400,000, this
Yep.
seems a lot of sense. If it's only on the 6.2 when it's 80,000, it's probably,
So
less than.
let me grab copies of their actual tax bills.
That'd be helpful.
And then we can simply add up those figures so that you guys have an actual number.
That'd be great. to have
Yeah, thank you.
the baseline. Thanks.
Sure, sure.
Can I just ask a question too? So we pay, say we decide to do it, we pay the 45,000. We're not asking the other towns to go in with us, is that, am I understanding that? Because we.
Yeah,
didn't-
that idea didn't seem to.
So Shelburne pays for this appraisal to be done. Do the other towns just automatically benefit from what we?
Oh, no. When you get an appraisal done, the only person you designate who the owner of that appraisal is, and that would be the town of Shelburne. No one else would see it. And then only in litigation would the other side even get to see it. So no, they wouldn't. They're all having their own done. That's why, it really made sense for someone to really kind of put all of the towns together to say this really makes sense. And I don't know if it was Buckland. Buckland is the big percentage here, as you said, as you heard when I said the percentages. If that's correct, I'll have to have him take a look at those allocations. But it may have been that if Buckland wasn't interested, then that pretty much killed the deal, because they were at 57%. And I imagine they have the same requirements in a reval. The DOR is making them.
And we
hire
haven't
an
reached
appraiser.
out- we haven't reached out to them for this
No.
doing, I mean.
So it certainly could be. It'd have to be really quick, because again, I'm sure that Sansucci would probably still be interested. Because he's the one who reminded me that he had made this offer. I wasn't here in FY22, so I didn't know. So it would have to be done really quick, because he'd have to get started quick.
Well, Karen, in addition, I mean, let's say we were to go down that path, my sense is that it might be the case that not only would we have to do the work of herding the 4 towns into one agreement, but we might also need some legal help to herd the towns into an agreement on what do you do if you get sued.
Exactly.
So that it would be more than just a cost sharing agreement. It would require probably some legal assistance there too.
Right. And just to be clear, so what we'd be buying is an appraisal report, would be a significant document, but the owners would be Buckland, Shelburne, all 4 towns would get that. So now in that case, it would be a document that's shared and used by all 4 towns. So the problem we ran into again was, what if one town, the one that doesn't have any skin, Charlemont, says, I don't want to pay lawyers to fight this. We've only got 2%. I'm going to settle with them. And so that just muddies the waters on our positions. So it can be complicated. It sounds like there's a lot of pros, but there are some cons too. Certainly the biggest pro would have been, it looks like this could have cost us something along the lines of 10,000 instead of 45,000. But that's just the reality of having other towns sort of pick up the weight. And by that, I mean Buckland, really.
All right.
All right, last, would there be an option to just cost share on the report and everyone deals with any litigation themselves and that's the deal? I mean, all you're dividing up is the cost of the report?
Yeah, that certainly should, and you can just say, that everyone's on their own, gets their own lawyers. The only thing is that sometimes as a matter of strategy, you do not want Eversource, or in my case, I didn't want First Light to see our appraisal until they gave us their appraisal. I wanted an even exchange. Well, Gil gave them our appraisal. And so it just sort of, it didn't work well for us in terms of strategy. So that, keep in mind that, we'd be sharing an appraisal. And we certainly can agree to that. We could agree to just, let's just hope for the best. And the only problem is when litigation comes in.
Yeah.
It's a complicated world.
It can be. I know.
Anyway, we should
right.
move along.
Okay.
We will meet again on this and try to come to a decision that we can put before the voters. I guess this would be sort of equivalent to the assessor's capital expense, that they would be asking the town to invest in some assessor infrastructure here.
Yeah, that's a good way. And again, if it appears as though you would like the Board of Assessors to release some funds, we would certainly do that for this purpose. But in the meantime, this week I'll make copies of the actual tax bills and tally up what these companies are paying to Shelburne on their various, as I said, there's at least 5 or 6 different parcels that Great Falls owns. And they pay a personal property tax bill as well for their stuff. So I will get that information. What's the best email to send it to for finance so that you guys all see it as soon as possible?
You send it to me, Karen, I'll send it
sure.
out to everyone.
Perfect. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Karen. That was extremely helpful. And
Great.
Terry, just in terms of next steps, what are we looking at in terms of timeline? The Finance Committee would bring a recommendation to the Select Board at some point in the near future?
Once all of our budget hearings are complete, we'll have a series of joint meetings with the Finance Committee just to hash over what's supported, what's not.
Okay.
All right. And again,
Great.
if I can be helpful at all at any future meetings, please let me know.
Great. And Karen, before you go, Rick, do you have any final questions or thoughts? I don't want to leave you out.
No, on the dam questions and the appraisal, we have no choice in 2 years. So
Correct.
45K now seems foolish to me. The 27.5 for 3 years, which ends on the year we have to spend it. It's not going to be 45,000 in 3 years. We know it's going to be more. It's one of those things that the herding cats reference of trying to get other towns to work together on this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It'd be a rough road to hoe, I think. And when you look at the big picture, 27.5 for the potential gain over the next multiple years doesn't seem out of balance to me at all. Just my
Yeah.
personal thoughts.
No, I think that's a
Again,
good thought. Rick.
Just to summarize again, so I'm going to have 2 questions back to Sansucci. I'm going to ask him about the allocation of, how we can assure how much of the dam is in Shelburne and get corrections on that. And then was another question. Oh,
They wanted the baseline
exactly.
tax bills of what we're currently getting from those utilities.
Right. The other question I wanted to ask Sansucci is how much would it be reduced if this governor's legislation goes through and the state is now valuing our 504s for us for free? That's probably their plan is to not start with that until FY26. I have a feeling they're not going to have to get it together until 27, but that would make a big difference if it's being done for free. We certainly don't want to pay someone else to do it. So I'd want to ask him about adjusting, if there would be any adjust, or how we would do that.
Yeah, that would make sense to have a clause in the contract there for
Right, right.
pending legislation.
Yep.
And the
Good.
other thing I think to check on, Terry mentioned the procurement question as to whether it would need to go to bid. And then we'd have what we need to know, I think.
Great.
Good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much,
Thank
Karen.
you. Have a good evening.
Yeah. All righty. Well, we are now at 10 of 8. We still got a fair amount to do, but is William Littell, can I jump to you since you have joined us for the Mohawk Trail use of surplus funds for enhanced 911 system item?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
I sent this information along to folks last week. I'm not sure if anybody else on the committee has seen it or how far it's gotten. But basically what we're asking our member towns is to use surplus capital from the projects that have been completed and there's some money left to help pay for the 911 mandated phone systems that we have to replace at all of the schools. It's quite the project at Buckland Shelburne and at the high school, middle school. Those are the two most expensive pieces of it. With Buckland Shelburne, it's going to be a little bit different because it's not actually all surplus funds at this point, because Robin still has some, well, actually, no, I think you guys are complete. So Buckland Shelburne is complete. So the numbers that I gave you have all of your surplus. So for Shelburne, your surplus right now is approximately $20,000.
How much again? I didn't hear that.
$20,155.
Okay.
Shelburne's share of the project for Mohawk Trail would be $3,621. Shelburne's share of the project for BSE would be $13,483. So the total cost of the two would be $17,104, which would leave a surplus balance of the surplus of $3,051. You know, taking those two off of the total surplus. This has to be completed by 2025. What this will do, for those of you that are not familiar with this, this is to enhance the 911 so that when any call is made anywhere in the building, when dispatch gets that call, they'll be able to see what room that call was made from, to speed up response and assist in response. So it's a mandate for all public buildings and schools. And, you know, our hope is that by using this surplus that we would lower the assessments to the towns, because we wouldn't have to put out a new project and we won't have to, you know, we could use this. And then that 3,051 that's left, the board can vote to either have that returned or, you know, that can be applied towards your capital payments, or it can be applied towards your capital assessments, or left in the capital fund for future projects. As I think you've done that part in the past with some surplus that's been left.
Great. Rick, do you have thoughts or questions about this?
Well, the state said it's got to be done in 2025. Do we use money that's already there, or do we take that money back and like put in the new project and bring that forward for something that it doesn't sound like we can opt out of anyway? So I think the finance committee could weigh in and their thoughts, which would be more prudent approach.
Finance committee?
Go ahead.
Question?
Is this on is this project on this year's capital needs list?
It is not in the capital It's not included in your capital assessment for this
Why?
year.
Well, I mean, this is an important project because it deals with the health and the life safety of all of the students and all of the staff, and I'm wondering why it's not the #1 project on the capital needs list.
Well, it's in the capital needs, but it's not included in your capital, your capital assessment because it hasn't been approved yet. So if it was going to be part of the capital assessment portion of your budget, we would bring it to you, you would approve it, and then we would assess you for that in the budget. But this is instead of doing it that way, as Rick just said, rather than returning this money to the towns, having you re-vote to do another capital project. You know, I think you've done this in the past. I apologize. I don't have that history part of it, but I think in the past, there's been other projects where the board has voted to reallocate the funds that were left over to do other projects. The question that we're leaving to each town is to check with your local council to see whether it would be a vote by your select board or a vote by your, you know, if it would have to go on to your town warrant.
And just to clarify, which I think was one of the implied questions of the finance committee, is the reason this was not on our just completed capital assessment because it was a mandate recently approved by the state?
It was.
Okay.
No. Wait, when was this recently approved by the state? This is a law that comes from 2008.
We were notified. I sent that information to the towns as well.
I'm wondering, to what degree do phone systems need to be replaced, modified? What work needs to be done on the phone systems to make this change?
So for Buckland, Shelburne, it's replacing the infrastructure because the infrastructure is so old, we can't just replace the phones or we can't just replace the system. We have to replace the infrastructure as well. That's why the cost is about $10,000 more than the other elementary schools. The other elementary schools are a little less because their infrastructure is already up to the standards that this requires.
And at the high school, what's the replacement?
About $21,000.
What's the work that needs to be done there? Is it software or switch or what?
At the high school, it's equipment, but it's not infrastructure, but it's a much bigger building, so there's a lot more equipment.
The law was, by the way, passed in 2009. And one of the things that it does is it requires anytime a multi-line phone system is installed, that the installer has an obligation to make sure that it complies with enhanced 911.
That was in that packet that I sent from the information that we had that I forwarded to everybody that Robin had received.
And some other work.
So we need to run this by our town council, it sounds like.
That's what we're asking you to do, to figure out whether it would just be a vote by you folks. And in the past, from what Bing has told me, she thinks in the past it was just a vote by the town boards individually to approve the, you know, the reappropriation of the surplus capital. And that's what one of the bond council said. But, you know, to err on the side of caution, we just want to have each town check and get your interpretation and make sure that we're doing it right, so that we don't get to the point, right, where the town meetings go by and we realize it should have been on the warrant. And then we're like, okay, we can't do this now, you know, for another year, or you have to have a special meeting. So we're trying to avoid all of that and, you know, see if we can get everything done in time.
Right. Terry, do you want to reach out to our town council there? And
Yes, I'll be happy to.
okay. And we can just fold this into our sort of joint finance select board deliberations as we prepare for town meeting?
Bill, what project is the money at Buckland Shelburne Elementary left over from?
Hold on, and I can tell you. One of the tabs in the budget book is the capital debt tab, and the capital debt tab lists the individual projects and what it entailed. I believe this was from the flooring replacement and asbestos abatement.
And at the high school?
High school, middle school projects were a boiler and parking lot.
What was the first thing?
Boiler work, furnace. If you come up with any other questions, or if there's anything else I can answer, just shoot me an email, and you know, if you check with your council or whatever, or give the office a call, or you know, we're just trying to get everything squared away and make sure you have all the information you need, which is why I put that whole spreadsheet together for you.
Right. So it sounds like it's a mandated activity, and we just have to decide how we want to move the money around.
Yeah, and we've, you know, all of the towns, well, most of the towns, 6 of the 8 towns have the money in surplus that can do the project. 2 of the towns would have to, you know, come up with, actually, and it would be Charlemont and Holly, because they don't have any elementary surplus because they're not in the district for elementary. So they would be assessed separately for their portion of the project.
Of just the high school part of the project.
Correct. And that's all in the, that spreadsheet that I shared had individual tabs on the bottom, and it lists every town and what their portion of the return is, and what their portion of the project is, and what the surplus would be.
Great. All righty. Well, thank you very much, Bill. And we will be back in touch once we consult with our attorney.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
All righty. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
All right. I think that we have going down to, we're now at old business item B, which is the Mass DOT traffic calming speed sign grant award on Mechanic Street. Did we it's like we lost Greg. I saw Greg Bardwell here earlier, but is not here now. Terry, do you have any recommendations on what we might do with this one? I have some ideas, but I don't know if you had a thought.
I know that Rick has talked, Greg had to leave to get his girls to bed. He said that he had spoke with Rick. He's also telling me now just to give him 3 minutes and he'll be back on the call.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll go on to new business item C, which is the H4138 Affordable Homes Act. And I don't know if that's the same. Is that the same act? I think that might be the same act that Karen Tonelli was referencing in regard to the state, if that act were passed, stepping in to assess utility properties, or at least Eversource properties. I just put that on the agenda because I got the email about it from, I think it was from FERCog or from somebody. Basically, they were looking for letters of support or for town sign-ons to a letter of support for that act, which is basically designed to give local municipalities options for raising additional revenue through several different means. I think real estate transfer fees was one of them. I wasn't looking at it so much as something that Shelburne would need to implement itself right away or at all, but that something that might be useful to other small towns. We have passed a Community Preservation Act already, which utilizes real estate transfer fees. So I think we're already kind of doing that local option taxation without this legislation. But if it includes that utility valuation feature, that might be something that we would be interested in as well. So I just wanted to see, Rick, if you had a chance to look at that, and if you wanted to recommend that Shelburne join in endorsing that piece of legislation.
Well, I do agree with a lot of what you just said, Andrew, that it's highly unlikely that it'll benefit Shelburne or that we would want to opt into it. In a nutshell, for people that listen to this later, it's a matter of a percentage of the sale price of high-end properties. It's not a tax, it's a fee called the real estate transaction fee. I think there's only 12 cities or towns in the state using it right now. It's a fee of up to 2% on a high-end property sale that would be set aside for affordable housing pursuit. The property turnover in Shelburne is negligible, up to 2%. Doesn't seem like a whole lot of money, and I don't see it benefiting the town if we were to participate. With that thought in mind, I said, okay, let's read the letter they want us to sign and see how I feel about that. And the very first paragraph made me say I wasn't interested in supporting this sign. It says that it is asking us to voice our support for the Affordable Home Act, particularly its provisions to enable local option transfer fees. We also wish to voice our support for over a dozen home rule petitions that were filed in this and previous sessions. I don't know what those 12 are, so don't ask me to sign a letter in support of 12 things I have no clue what they're talking about. So at this point, in the absence of that information, I would not be interested in a vote to support it, although I would certainly consider it if someone wanted to pursue this and provide what those other things are they're asking us to support, because it's a form letter. We can't choose our own wording.
Barry, do you know what those other home rule petitions are?
No, I do not.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to leave it there for tonight and let it pass by us, or unless we bring back further information.
I think we have so many things we can do in the affordable housing area, Andrew, that are more immediately available to us. The new bylaw that we just had passed for the Mechanic Street property and the 112 property. We seem to be sitting on our hands. We ought to be looking at pursuing those. It's a done deal. We got what we wanted. There's an option to at least get a start.
No, I agree. I think there are plenty of other things that we can do as a town. I think it was more a question of whether we wanted to help other towns out with this proposal.
As I say, I'm not opposed to it, but certainly not blindly with 12 other things listed as us supporting.
Well, I don't know if I have the time to delve into the research for you there, Rick, but I think we'll probably just leave it there for the moment and let other towns take the lead on that.
Okay.
I mean, unless that's something you want to research and bring back to us.
I don't see the value to it on the surface of how they outlined how it works.
Okay.
And the process.
Great. All right, well, I see Greg's tile here, so we can return to the Mass DOT Traffic Calming Speed Sign Grant Award for Mechanic Street. Greg.
Hi there.
Hi. I
How's it
just
going?
wanted to say thank you for your letter, which we have as part of our packet here. And I just wanted to say, speaking on just for myself, that my reason for putting this on the agenda and bringing you in, and I was kind of hoping maybe we'd hear from Mark as well, but was that I feel like when we have proposals that put infrastructure and technology into our community, that we should give the public a chance to weigh in on it. So that I'm not saying yay or nay on it myself, but I'm saying that just as a matter of course, when we propose to add infrastructure to our streetscapes, that the public should have a chance to tell you what they think about it.
Yeah, no, I understand that point of view. I just think that maybe perhaps we should have this conversation before we go applying for grants that we have the possibility of actually being awarded, and then not, then getting into a situation like this again. So I wholeheartedly understand where you're coming from. So
yeah. So I mean, go ahead, Rick.
My thought is we're into it. We signed a memorandum of agreement. The select board voted to pursue it. One person has objected to the thought of it without any perception of what it may look like. This is a public safety matter that the chief didn't take lightly, in my opinion. It's standard operating procedure to protect your school zone. The state mandates the configuration, the size of that signage. I know you asked if there was possibility having a smaller sign, and that was a great idea. The fact is the Department of Transportation has those specifications. One of the things that make this ironically a larger structure is that it's solar. So you got to jack it way up to get the solar panel on it. You got to make it up high enough off the road so the snow plows aren't hitting the equipment. That equipment being batteries and control boxes. If it was a hardwired piece, we wouldn't have blinked. So I think we're already in violation of the agreement we did. They were supposed to be installed in 90 days. We're way beyond that. I don't support delaying it any further than we have to. If weather's an issue, that's one thing. I do have a to-scale rendering, if you would like to see, of both locations proposed, so we can actually, when you say, oh, they're huge, people get their mind's eye working, and the mind's eye often lies. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to share my screen and show you the actual signs and the actual locations proposed.
Sure, go ahead, Rick.
Did I get it?
Hang on a second. Let me see if I can. Oh, wait. Whoop. There we go. Yeah, you managed to plunk an actual image of it right down into the spot, huh?
At both ends. To scale, I mean, that's fairly easy to do. Figure out at what point each of the signs adjacent are what height and pop them in. As I say, would I have picked that size if there were options? Probably not. I think it could be a little less. But again, being solar, that has requirements that force it to get a little bigger. The size of the sign, the font, That's all mandated by DOT. We're talking about something that our local chief of police did a study of watching speeds coming in from Route 2 and across the school zone, found a need for it, documented it, put in the application with the support of the select board. We got it, we signed the contract, and now we're not putting them in. Our only option here, in my opinion, is to do what we committed to do and move forward in putting them in and making sure we protect the children, especially by the way, they only operate during school hours. So that also diminishes their physical presence. I think if you look at these two here, I drive by them both all the time and I don't see those signs anymore. You see them twice and then you know what they are, you don't look again. I think those two would blend into our minds as well. I also think that the school has supported the installation of these signs for the additional safety concerns. So I, for one, would like to see us just leave it alone, continue with what we already agreed to do and get it done. I don't think there's any fruit to be harvested from taking a poll on a piece of safety intelligence.
Well, thank you, Rick, for photoshopping these images into the landscape here. That's a helpful start. I hope those are to scale. I took some photographs of the ones up on 112, and the actual dimension when you put them next to the electrical wire there that you see is that they are level with that electrical wire.
They're actually level with the telephone wires, which hang really low on Route 112.
Okay.
The electrical wires are on the top.
Okay. So no, yes, right. So I guess I don't know whether we're looking at apples to apples in that regard, in terms of where the wire placements are. But I guess my own observations of this are a couple. One, that if you look behind the sign on the left there, which is Mechanic Street going north, there are 3 school safety signs already in place, plus a flashing crosswalk sign that's quite bright, that runs during the school loading hours. So from the northbound side, there's already quite a lot of school safety advisory signage. And that's the operative word that I'd like to introduce to this conversation, is that this is advisory signage. It's not slowing people down, it's telling them how fast they're going. And that if you want to actually slow people down in a school zone, you can put a speed bump in, and that will actually slow them down. But if you want to put in more advisory signage, we now have 4 advisory signs on the northbound side and 1 on the southgoing side. So by that math, there's probably a stronger case for the one at the corner of Church and Mechanic Street, because you don't have that high concentration of green and yellow advisory signs that are already there, plus the flashing crosswalk sign. So I guess I would like to hear in a public meeting, to which people have been notified and invited to, what the case is for the need and whether this technology is the right solution for that case.
You know, that's just going to draw the NIMBYs. This is a NIMBY issue.
I'm just saying, anytime you put in a piece of infrastructure, whether it's a trash can or a bench or a street sign or a...
Those are totally different. They have no safety considerations whatsoever.
Well, but the case needs to be made for what is the safety case we're making here? And why is it that the measures that we put in already that I've just described are not succeeding?
Those aren't, Andrew, the measures that are in place aren't there. They're not speed limit radar signs. They're not the same technology. The crosswalk signs only go off when an individual is standing at the crosswalk and presses the button, or the sensor picks up somebody at the crosswalk to cross. That was implemented because of the number of kids that almost got picked off at drop off or pickup at the end and the beginning and the end of the school day. The school crossing sign, I think, yeah, you could, that sign that's next to the radar sign on the left side, with the two folks walking. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty evident that that's a school zone. If we wanted to remove that, I guess we could discuss the legalities behind whether or not that's even a possibility. But quite frankly, for throughout the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years of sitting on Mechanic Street, and watching vehicular traffic in the morning at drop off and in the afternoon at pickup, it's not an area where we can stick a cruiser and start making stops. At pickup and drop off, behind this sign, cars are basically all along the roadway. It turns into a 1-lane traffic, and you have folks that just get on it coming off the stop sign, going through this school zone. I think it would probably benefit those folks to see what their speed is, because quite often I get complaints, the police department gets complaints about cars driving through town or down Main Street, and they're doing 100 miles an hour, and they're doing the speed limit. If I was to drive 25 miles an hour through Bridge Street in the middle of the day, which is the speed limit, people would have a conniption fit because they would think I was driving 60 miles an hour when I was actually driving the speed limit. So I think it would behoove people to actually get a read on exactly what their speed is. And we got a lot of good feedback on the opposite end, where folks are coming off of Route 2, and we've had numerous complaints about people coming off Route 2, not slowing down, going down to that hill here at a high rate of speed where it's extraordinarily dangerous. So I don't think that we're comparing apples and spaghetti. We're not comparing apples and oranges.
So once again, I mean, I think I'd like to hear the case from you, the principal, from Mark, and from the residents in the neighborhood who may have similar concerns about safety, and then ask ourselves, what's the best way to slow people down if that's what we really need to do? And if we really want to slow people down, maybe we put in raised crosswalks like Smith College has on Route 9, or Northampton has on other parts of town, or there are 3 of them on Lincoln Avenue in Amherst. You know, that those things will really slow you down if that's what we want to do.
They come with similar pros and cons. You know, people slowing down, then accelerating from a speed bump, or or the damage done to a vehicle, or the headaches it creates for plowing. And I mean,
I get it. I'm with you. Yes, there are pros and cons on each one, but one is an advisory measure and the other is an actual slow you down measure. Terry.
At the end of the day, the original location that was proposed was questioned by a resident. The highway and the police chief went out, chose a new location. The resident who resides directly across from that new location is thrilled by the sign. It just seems like we're taking 3 steps back on an application that was submitted with the board's support, the school's support, the police chief, the highway support. And now because one person didn't want to look out the window and see it, which I get, we're opening it up to the entire town to comment on. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Actually, Terry, I'm not proposing this measure because one person complained. I'm proposing the measure of having a public meeting and giving the public an opportunity to comment, because I think that's the right thing to do. In every case that we do these kinds of infrastructure improvements, we should have those public meetings.
Maybe going forward, we should think about that before we sign an application and sign a contract to do it. In this case, you're opening Pandora's box for no good reason if you pursue that.
Well, I mean, the public has an opportunity to comment. It's still the select board that's got to take the vote.
No, I don't see the point of putting it through that process. I don't see any benefit at all of doing that. I still support just moving forward, getting done what we already contracted to do.
Well, I don't see the votes for that happening tonight.
I don't think it needs a vote. That vote already happened. You asked to pause it by putting it on the calendar, but the select board voted to do this. You signed it personally. I don't think they need our permission to proceed.
And when we signed off on this grant proposal, did we have those specs and those dimensions for that project, that product, when we applied for this?
I'm not certain whether or not you had the specifications.
Then I would not say that we authorized the thing that we got.
You got what the state says you need if you're going to do it.
No, I mean, we got a piece of equipment that the state gave us in a grant.
I think it would have been a question to ask before signing it.
I mean, there was a drawing that was submitted with a memorandum of agreement that was signed by yourself and Margaret Payne. There was a sketch that I showed you, Andrew.
Well,
you're looking at the one in the packet?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it will show up well enough, but there is a picture that was included with the memorandum of understanding.
well, if the project is procedurally going forward, why are we discussing it tonight?
Because you put it on the agenda.
All right, well, you've heard my thoughts on the subject.
Great. Move forward. Get her done.
Thank you for coming, Greg.
Thanks for having me.
Let's see, I've been jumping all through the agenda tonight.
Rick, are you able to take that photo down?
I'm trying to. I thought I did. Here we go.
There you go.
Do we have any other business other than our
yes.
next meeting? Go ahead.
I do have one item. I sent it out this morning. Mark made a second attempt to get a third proposal for the new service installation at the pole barn and was unsuccessful. So the two proposals that he has is one from Current Electric for $10,900 and one for Palmary Electric in the amount of $16,740. His recommendation would be for the board to award Current Electric.
Any questions about that, Rick?
I am reasonably familiar with it. I understand that Current Electric was the company who put in the electrical service at the existing town yard, the other shed where there's a solar. That everything was smooth, went to plan, the work was done properly. It's a substantial difference in price. I tried to find differences in the two quotes given us that would say why it's such a big spread. I can't see anything based on what they put into their bids. And I think this whole project has been delayed so long with supply issues, with the COVID, the equipment delay, it laying on the ground while we try to find somebody to put it up. Let's just get some power in it so they can have lights and plug in tools to work on the equipment, et cetera. And I think we should move forward and approve one of these offers. That's my comment.
You want to make a motion to accept the bid from Current?
So moved.
I will second it. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll bring it to a vote. All in favor, Rick?
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and the motion carries. Any other business?
No.
Okay, our next meeting is March 11th, 2024. We have some correspondence from Mary Lou Gallup. Did you have a chance to look at that, Rick?
Yes, I did.
Great. I did reply to Mary Lou and advised her that Terry does advise the Recreation Committee about how to participate in the budget and capital process, and that I certainly appreciate the amount of effort that she has put into the Recreation Committee and into researching improvements at the gym. And my strong recommendation is that Mary work with and achieve consensus among the committee on what recommendations to bring forward, because we don't do it on an individual basis. We do it by committee. Otherwise we would be hearing, up to 6 different presentations from each committee about how to proceed. But that was my correspondence with Mary Lou Gallup. Sergeant Richardson has given us some correspondence about John Taylor's recent training. Did you have a chance to look at that, Rick?
Yes, sir.
Great.
I happen to
comments?
know Sergeant John Richardson. I serve on the Franklin First Federal Credit Union Board of Directors with him. Nice gentleman, and you can take what he says to the bank. No pun intended. But kudos to Chief Taylor for his participation, and it's very nice to see another department reach out and acknowledge it.
Great. We are now at public comment, and we have 2 members of the public still in the room. Mary Lou, do you want to offer a public comment?
I would like to, yes. Thank you, Andrew. I reached out to obviously everybody that was included in that correspondence that you got, Terry at town office, the head of the Recreation Committee, the Finance Committee, because I believe that the system of communicating with committees has broken down with the Recreation Committee. I don't know what, Terry, you gave to Norman as far as procedural information, but it never came to the committee members. And I've been on the committee since October of 2022. And one of my first questions was, how do we function? And what is the budget? What's the procedure here? When do we submit a budget for next year? And what I get is very conflicting information, very nebulous information. We don't have a budget. If we need something, we go to Terry in town office. The director doesn't work for us, he works for the town. And so I said, okay, when do we start putting together the budget for next year? Well, we don't do that. Terry does that. And so I ask, okay, I have some financial requests for the next year programming. How do I go about submitting that? oh, well, we don't do that. We go to Terry when we need funds, and that's how we get the money. Well, doesn't she need to know ahead of time? Wouldn't that be beneficial to the town to know what the recreation programming needs are? This goes on and on and on. So when it comes to capital needs for the building, for the courts, for the fencing, for the grounds, I get the same reaction from the committee head and then from John Walsh. John Walsh says you have to react as a committee and submit something. And then the head of the committee says, no, we don't do that. Terry takes care of it. So I want you to know that the system is broken. I don't know how to fix it. I think there are great needs at the Cowell Gym and in a lot of other town buildings, but the discussion is not happening within the Recreation Committee to preserve the recreation assets that we have now. That court, it's been brought up for, I believe, 4 years now, that there are maintenance requirements for that court. It needs some sealing, it needs some crack repair. We got a group together that was willing to do it, and the committee wouldn't even come to the town and ask for the equipment to do it. It's the system. Need to know these things. They're all in. I think they should be considered in the budget. John Walsh was taken by surprise by some of them because they're not on his radar. They're not building components. They're program related components. And those should be coming from the Recreation Committee. The Recreation Committee is not bringing them to you, I believe, because they don't think, the head of the committee does not believe the town has money or will approve the funding for them. I think somebody's going to get hurt on the bleachers. I think we're not complying with ADA. If I were the town's insurance company and I saw that those old bleachers were being used without trained staff being responsible for them, I wouldn't insure that building until they were fixed. I also wouldn't insure that building for use of the newer bleachers, because you're getting volunteers to crawl under there and poke sticks at brackets that are broken, and it's going to cost $1,100 to fix it. There's something wrong with this picture. So I thought you needed to know my thoughts as a member of the committee. I didn't write as a member of the committee because it's not my purview to go outside the committee, but somebody has to raise some of the very important issues that are being, they're being pushed along from year to year. So this will be my third budget year within the committee, and nothing has changed. And I'm sure Terry would like to know what we're going to need for recreation programming next year so that she can be ahead of the game. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mary.
It's
And
Mary Lou.
Mary Lou, thank you.
Yes.
And because we're in public comment, I'm not going to respond, but if we have an opportunity to discuss that either in the Recreation Committee or in a future Select Board agenda, I'd be glad to go into it further. But for now, we thank you for your comment. And
Thank you.
Jeff Bettner, do you have a public comment?
Yes, I do. The Energy Committee met last week and we decided to hold a energy fair during April 27th on the Saturday at the elementary school. And I just thought I'd bring that to people's attention. We're going to be having some little workshops on solar, mini splits, insulation, mass save, things like that. And so we're looking forward to doing it. It'll be part of Earth Day week, kind of, is our intention. So
You
that's
said
one of
Saturday, April 27th?
April 27th, yes, at the elementary school. And we'll be publicizing it a lot more, of course, but we just came to that conclusion. So if anybody has things that they would like to bring to our attention to have at that meeting, we're going to have displays from different businesses as well. So, and then the second thing I have is I didn't know if we had to ask permission from the select board to write a Green Communities grant with Allison Gage from FERCog for the streetlight project. And so I wasn't sure if you guys had to approve that, and we can put it on the next agenda. It wouldn't go out until mid-April. And but we just want to make you aware that there is a grant coming. They haven't even posted what we have to do to apply for the grant yet. So they're changing some of the rules this year. So once we get it, we'll bring it forward to you guys, but I just didn't know. I figured that you would need to approve that. I don't know at what point you want to see it. So that's one of my questions. And then the other is, do we need permission from the board to hold a informative talk on streetlights? Because I'm also going to do a separate night where we're just going to talk about the new streetlight stuff that's going up, but there won't be anything voted on. Just to let the public know what's happening with streetlights, kind of thing. And so I didn't know if we needed your permission to go forward with that as well, since we're just kind of an ad hoc committee, but
Terry, do you have a recommendation there about that? Do they have the power to hold their own public meetings?
I think it's great that you're running it by the select board first so that they're aware of it. And if they don't have any problem with it, please include us in the invite.
Okay, yeah, oh, definitely.
Rick,
And
do you have any concern about that?
Go ahead.
Rick, do you have any concern?
You were both talking.
I'm sorry.
I didn't think we were supposed to discuss public comment time.
No, but we're just about at the end, and I'm flexing to just answer his questions.
I have no problem with it whatsoever.
Okay. And the previous thing, I think with the grant, Jeff,
yeah,
we're meeting next on March 11th. So if you can bring something by then.
Yeah, if you could just put us on the program for that, I'll put together something more organized for it. I just wanted to make sure we're doing it the right way, because don't want to give you the last minute of, oh, yeah, we need to sign this grant. We've had that before. We haven't even seen what we're signing for, so we don't even know the amounts or anything. We're still working out some of that with real term, but and then the other one last quick comment is that picture that Rick showed of the school streetlight on the left, the picture on the left, that's the streetlight that's basically a tree grow light. It's actually growing into the tree, and it's broken at the moment, so it's not even functioning. Really, the school should consider just removing that light altogether while we're over there working on doing other projects. It's not owned by the town, it's owned by the school. And I think they originally put it up for the sidewalk, but it became a tree grow light. So it's like probably not very functional. So that's one, while you're working in that area, just keep that in mind. If anybody's got a high lift, can deal with it. So, okay, that's all I have. So.
All righty. Well, thank you very much.
For sure.
All right, we've come to the end of public comments. Are we ready to adjourn?
I would move we adjourn.
All right, I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
And Andrew is aye, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.